The time was May 1941. Britain stood alone. Convoy sinkings were increasing. When Bismarck, the most powerful battleship in the world, broke out into the Atlantic and sank the Hood.
Hood is struck and there is a catastrophic explosion and this mighty warship sinks very, very quickly.
Bismarck had to be sunk if Britain was to survive. Winston Churchill gave the order.
I don't care how you do it. You must
Sink the Bismarck.
This is how it was done.
There's a sense of new grimness and determination to pursue the Bismarck and avenge the Hood. With every passing hour, Bismarck is getting closer to France and to escape.
But thank God you've got Swordfish in this situation. You know, you need something that can get airborne in this
Insane weather conditions, yeah.
Dönitz orders his U-boats also to give the Bismarck every help.
The fate of the Atlantic War and the entire war is dependent on you.
Yeah.
It may well be a question of victory or death. Ship unmaneuverable. We fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer. How exciting is this? And it's literally got everything, because obviously you and I are now completely obsessed with all matters naval. And it's got Swordfish.
Yeah.
And battleships, and heavy cruisers, and light cruisers, and tribal class destroyers. It's got the lot.
Yeah.
It's got great characters. It's got the mightiest battleship the Germans ever produced. There is literally nothing not to like about this absolutely amazing story.
It's literally all hands on deck, this situation. That's what's so amazing about this, is the Royal Navy's intent to snuff the Bismarck threat out. And Admiral Lütjens, in the last 4 episodes, we rather characterised him as sort of fatalistic and doomed and looking out into the middle distance.
And sighing a lot.
Sighing a lot, thinking, oh, well, I've had it.
My ship is doomed.
He had every reason to feel like that, because this is the maths that the Germans have decided to take on by building a surface fleet in a weird way, trying to play big boys games in terms of naval action. They've got themselves and these crews and these officers and these men into this terrible situation where the minute they leave Norway, they're spotted. Their options are either to sail down the channel or through the Denmark Straits. All their options are rotten. And it's simply a matter of time, isn't it?
They could have done the Faroe-Shetland gap.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's not much of a gap
when
you're reined against the largest navy in the world, so that therein lies the rub. And you're absolutely right, and they've also done the same sort of mistake to a certain extent that the current Royal Navy in the UK has done, which is building, its 2 vast carriers, but no support around it, or not sufficient support around it.
Yeah.
And it's great having a really powerful world's biggest battleship, but if you haven't got the tools that go with it, you're going to be in trouble. And they haven't got any places to dock and oil. They've got tankers sort of roaming around in the Atlantic at various points. But the mistakes that Lütjens has made, not refueling when he was at Bergen, not refueling again before going into the Denmark Straits, is really coming back to haunt him in a very, very big way. And the problems that the Kriegsmarine have of trying to play this big game of sending these capital ships out to maraud Allied convoys is the shortcomings are really starting to become very, very clear.
Yeah.
A lucky shot from Bismarck hit the Hood and destroyed the Hood, but a lucky shot from Prince of Wales also caused untold damage to the Bismarck, slowed her down.
Yeah.
And she's operating not at max capability already.
But what this is about is ships don't make fleets and fleets make navies. And if you can build ships, but what you need is fleets if you want to have a navy. And what they've done is built themselves some exciting big battleships, but just nowhere near enough. They haven't built a fleet. You need a fleet. And without fleet, you don't have a navy. And they're in this invidious position where they're up against the world's biggest navy, which is made up of lots of fleets and seemingly endless ships, as we'll see. When basically the balloon goes up and they know that the Royal Navy knows that the Bismarck's there for the taking.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine for a minute that anyone listening to this hasn't already listened to Hood versus Bismarck. But just in case they haven't, is it worth us giving a quick 1-minute recap, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. 1-minute recap. Go, Jim.
The battleship Bismarck and Prince Eugen have left Germany. They've gone up the coast of Norway, round the top of Iceland, into the Denmark Straits, which is a comparatively narrow channel between the west coast of Iceland and the east coast of Greenland up in the Arctic. And their plan is to then move out into the Atlantic where they can maraud Allied convoys. But they've got ships in pursuit. They've got the cruisers Norfolk and Suffolk shadowing them. And they've also been intercepted by the brand new British battleship, the Prince of Wales, and the battle cruiser HMS Hood, which is the most famous battle warship in the world.
Yeah.
And there's an engagement called the Battle of the Denmark Straits on the 24th of May. And in that, Hood is struck and there is a catastrophic explosion and this mighty warship sinks very, very quickly. And it was with the end of Hood and Bismarck pushing on to the south that we left our last series. So this is a continuation of that extraordinary story.
And although it's a 20-minute encounter, this, just before 6 a.m, and the Hood is lost, but the Bismarck is damaged badly enough that she knows she's got...
in the bow.
In the bow, she's lost fuel, she's had problems with her steering and stuff. So they know, basically, Admiral Gunther Lütjens knows he's got to get her fixed. He's got to go to Brest, where there's a dry dock.
Yes.
As quickly as he can, but of course he can't go quickly because he's been damaged. So he's lost some speed, he's lost some of his edge, because that's part one of the advantages of Bismarck, is she's pretty quick. Basically, what he's going to do is rely on the fact that the Atlantic is enormous.
Which is?
And hope that if he steams on, he can shake the Royal Navy off. But if he can get her to Saint-Nazaire initially, he can get her patched up and then head back out into the Atlantic with the Scharnhorst and Eisenhower, and they can do their marauding and they can do some convoy raiding. Although even that, how long for?
That's the plan. Sounds great on paper.
Well, I don't think it does sound great on paper, actually.
Okay.
Particularly as, the other thing is the Scharnhorst and Eisenhower have had an absolutely diabolical time in dock, in harbour, with the Royal Air Force. Essentially, they've had the unrelenting attention of the Royal Air Force.
Well, yes, and this is the kind of slightly push-me-pull-you kind of problems or advantages that the Germans face, because if you're in Kiel or Bremen or either Gottenhafen, which is now in Poland, after all, up in the Baltic, you're comparatively safe.
Yeah.
Even if you're deep in the fjord by Bergen, you're comparatively okay.
Yeah.
But if you're hopping a skip across the channel in Brittany, in Brest or Saint-Nazaire, you're pretty exposed. There's only so much that kind of anti-aircraft defense can do, and booms and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And as we discussed in an earlier episode, the damage has been made. So yes, it's great that you're so close to the Atlantic, but you're also closer to British bombers and coastal command and bomber command and all the rest of it. So that's a problem. And by the way, the command structure is such that Gunther Lütjens is the guy overall in command, but the captain of the Bismarck is Kapitän Z. Lindemann.
Yeah.
And Lindemann and Lütjens are not aligned at all on what they should do. Lindemann is all for doing 180 degrees and heading back up through the Denmark Straits.
Yeah.
Thinks that's their best chance of escape.
Yeah.
That's questionable. But both routes, whether you go back over the north of Iceland and into the arms of the comparatively narrower, smaller waters of the North Sea, or whether you go down into the vastness of the Atlantic, there's both problems, because obviously you can get back to the safety of a fjord in Norway quicker. A long night, you might be able to kind of pull it off, or a couple of nights. Whereas the Atlantic is going to take you a long time. The longer you're out there, the longer the British have to kind of muster their own forces. So it's really 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
And the fact that Lütjens makes a decision to go for Saint-Nazaire, which then becomes Brest, as it happens, it's not a straightforward decision.
No.
But he's made it. He's made his bed, and now he's going to have to lie in it along with all his men.
And again, his problem is that he can't go as fast as he'd hope because of the damage. They've had to repair the ship. They're repairing the ship on the hoof, and so rather than cruising at sort of 30 knots maximum, where he could actually cover quite a lot of ground quite quickly, they're down to 24 knots.
Yeah.
Which the opportunities for the Royal Navy, for the Admiralty to strike, are blossoming, aren't they? Is the truth?
Yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? The Germans are in a tremendous rush. The Royal Navy isn't particularly. It's sort of gathering itself.
Well, it's in a rush in the sense that it needs to intercept while they can.
But it's gathering all its assets it possibly can. There's a difference, isn't there? In other aspects, the Germans are operating, this is all tactical. They're just thinking tactically. Whereas the Royal Navy is operating on a strategic level here.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And we've talked about that in land fighting, where the Germans they're always thinking tactically. Kesselring in Italy is thinking tactically the whole time. What can I do right now? What can I do right now? Rather than what will benefit me in the long term? What's the best use of my assets in the long term? It's that.
Yeah. Short-termism.
Exactly. Complete absence of the strategic component in their thinking.
This is the Bismarck's first operational trip. It's launched in 1939 to great fanfare. It's probably launched as an operational ship the previous autumn of 1940. It's been working up, doing exercises, getting its crew, training, all the rest of it up until this point.
Yeah.
when it leaves the Baltic on the 18th of May, 1941, this is its first mission, its first ever mission, the most vaunted, heralded, biggest battleship in the world, about which the Germans have made unbelievable mileage and fanfare and film footage, and Hitler visiting the crew on the 5th of May and all this sort of stuff and coming aboard, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it couldn't be more high profile. So everyone's watching. So Lütjens is in a bind. Which way does he go? Does he go back up the Denmark Straits? Does he go down to Brittany? He's made the decision to go to Brittany, but he's also got the Prince Eugen with him, which is a cruiser. So he thinks, actually, I'll just be better off on my own because two's a crowd. It means you've got to sort of factor in them as well, make some bigger target, blah, blah, blah. So he orders Captain Z. Brinkman, who's the captain of the Prince Eugen, to detach. And says, go and hunt independently before returning safely to the Baltic. And Admiral Raeder, who is the commander-in-chief of the Kriegsmarine of the German Navy, is back in Germany. He recognises that Lütjens is the best man to make this call. He's the man on the spot. So he goes, okay, fine, that's your call. But Lütjens has also signalled his intention. So Raeder is now able to prep for all eventualities, or do what he can to prep for all eventualities, which is comparatively limited. So destroyers are alert in the North Sea, operating out of bases in Norway. U-boats are sent on to patrol the Faroe-Shetland Passage. Luftflotte 5 in Norway is put on alert. In Saint-Nazaire, dry docks prepared, so are they in Brest. Barrage balloons are raised, searchlights, heavy and light flak are ordered immediately to the port, which makes you think, what? They weren't already there? I mean, what the heck's going on? Luftflotte 3, which is in France, is also on alert, and Dönitz is ordered to put all his U-boats at Bismarck's disposal. Well, if the U-boats are all at Bismarck's disposal, then they can't be just stopping Allied convoys, can they?
Yeah.
Because as we've already pointed out in an earlier series about the Atlantic War, there aren't very many U-boats at this point. You're talking about a maximum of probably 10 operating in the Atlantic at any one time.
Yeah.
So again, it's a bit like the Battle for Norway, where the U-boats were taken out of the Atlantic to kind of get involved in the Norwegian campaign. Take them out of the Atlantic, they can't do what they're supposed to do, which is destroy Allied shipping. If you put them over to the defence of the Bismarck, that's what they're doing. They're now not destroying convoys because you can absolutely bet your bottom dollar no convoy's going to go anywhere near this.
Yeah.
You've got a problem on your hand. Anyway, after that afternoon of the 24th of May, following the morning Battle of the Denmark Straits, Bismarck's speed drops from 26 knots to 24 knots, and then a little bit more later on as well. So the problems are multiplying, and you think, okay, it's great that Raeder's doing all this, putting people on alert and getting Luftflotte, weren't they on alert anyway? I mean, it's kind of sounds good, but so what?
But this goes to my point: is the Germans are operating in this sort of immediate tactical space, and they aren't thinking in a strategic sense at all. Because if Bismarck were out and about, she'd expect to take damage, so you'd expect to have a dry dock ready, so you'd expect to have the air cover for said dry dock. The Air Forces, the Luftwaffe are on hold for that exact eventuality, but they're reacting. They're just reacting to everything. It's all reaction rather than deep planning.
Yes.
But then that's characteristic of the German war effort in general. I think it's interesting to see it played out here on the sea just as much as anywhere else. So when we get through all of this, all of the assets deployed, it's almost like there's that Simpsons meme where they're kicking someone on the floor. It's a bit like that. So the British destroyers head back to Havelfjord and Iceland to refuel.
These are the destroyers that were with Norfolk and Suffolk.
Yeah, with this flotilla around Norfolk and Suffolk.
Yeah.
Prince of Wales is patched up. And of course, there's civilian contractors on board because the guns are brand new and don't quite work. And they've been involved in the battle, which is, I think, do draw overtime for that. And by midday, Captain John Leach, the Prince of Wales, he's confident he can carry on fighting if necessary.
Let me at them, sir.
I mean, it's extraordinary. Everyone's a pocket Nelson, aren't they? Forget pocket battleships. It's pocket Nelsons.
It's pocket Nelson. Yeah. That's very good.
Admiral Tovey says to him, just shadow the Bismarck, please. Why lose another capital ship when you're bringing so many that the Bismarck won't know what to shoot at, is to basically.
Okay, so let's hear it.
Well, yeah.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah, well, yeah. So the weather's clear the south of the Denmark Straits, and Admiral Frederick Waite Walker, who's the commanding officer of the 12th Cruiser Squadron, that's who's shadowing the Bismarck. He's got the Prince of Wales, the Norfolk and Suffolk, and they're moving their way through the fog, but the British radar is too good and can keep track of the Bismarck. By early evening, visibility is reduced to 6 miles, and they're sending signals, they're closing in, and one of the reasons they're able to close it is because the Bismarck's losing speed.
Yep.
And they really, really, there's two good reasons now to sink the Bismarck, let alone the important strategic reason to remove a major dangerous asset from the Kriegsmarine's inventory. It's the hood. And people really want revenge. So Admiral Dudley Pound, orders up his dispositions for this battle. And before the Battle of Trafalgar, the First Lord of the Admiralty, Lord Byron, sets in motion all the ships that are then able to turn up for that battle.
Well, Pound can now pretty much do the same thing, can't he?
He can do what he wants.
When you've got a large army, a large navy rather, this is what you can do. You've suddenly got a lot of assets and you can do what the hell you like. You can maneuver them all over the place from all different corners of the globe. And that's exactly what's happening.
Because navies are fleets rather than ships. So HMS Revenge is sent from Halifax. Ramillies sent from Newfoundland. The light cruisers Manchester, Birmingham, and Arethusa, they are ordered to new positions in the Denmark Strait. Then from northeast of the Azores, the cruisers London and Edinburgh are ordered onto that. From the west of the Clyde, the battleship HMS Rodney and the destroyers Eskimo, Tartar, and Moshona are also ordered into the Atlantic. Force H, which
and these are all tribal class. These are all tribal class destroyers. They're the latest, newest, fanciest destroyers, bristling with torpedoes and weaponry.
Yeah, Force H, which is based out of Gibraltar, is on its way with Ark Royal, the carrier, the battle cruiser Renown, and the light cruiser Sheffield, and Admiral Vian's destroyers. And they're all they've just been told, drop what you're doing.
There's a bigger fish to fry.
Exactly. And we're going to deep fry it and then air fry it.
Yes, we're the lions and we're going to get the jackal.
Waite Walker is ordered to stitch the Bismarck, even if it means running out of fuel. So just keep your radar eyes on her. And then...
and if that's not enough...
I mean, this is fantastic. Then Admiral Tovey is coming with the King George V, KG-5, Repulse, the new carrier, Victorious, Admiral Curtis's second cruiser squadron with Galatea, Aurora, Kenya, and Neptune. 9 destroyers, and they're just 360 miles away. So if they're steaming on hard, they're going to get there. They're going to get there dead quick. And I mean, this is
just fantastic, isn't it?
When we talked about big boys games earlier, this is the problem. If you're the Kriegsmarine, right? This is why are you building surface ships? Because this is what's going to happen to them, right?
But also, what you've also got is a large number of fighting naval commanders who have been around the block, who've been beaten up at Dartmouth when they were 14, have kind of gone through the First World War, have seen plenty of action all around the world in the Mediterranean and elsewhere, in the interwar period, have since been involved in the Second World War. And these guys are really, really good, completely imperturbable, and have got to where they've got to by proving their worth time and time again.
Yeah.
That's this. When the news is broken about the sinking of Hood, Tovey's on the bridge of the KG-5, the King George V, and he's told via the fleet wireless officer, who's Commander Jacob, who comes and tells him very excitedly, and then Tovey just goes, "All right, Jacob, there's no need to shout." That's
extraordinary, isn't it?
But of course, Tovey has got a bit of a problem on his hands because he's got to second guess what Lütjens is trying to do with Bismarck and indeed Prince Eugen still at this point. And he doesn't know about the splitting up because that hasn't happened yet. And he's got to kind of work out where to send all this vast forces. But he's under no illusion that the Atlantic really, really is vast. And I can tell you from having done that trip across the Atlantic in December, it really, really is. But I think it's worth mentioning, there's an amazing account of this whole episode by a sub-lieutenant on HMS Tartar, which is one of the tribal classes which is attached to the Rodney. And he's called Sub-Lieutenant George Wally. And Wally's only been in the Navy a year. He's RMVR. He still considers himself massively wet behind the ears. And already this has been a very tough trip. And he says, calls the weather's been absolutely disgusting. And so it has. We've talked a lot about fog banks and huge waves and all the rest of it. So don't underestimate how tough it is, this life on a tribal class in the kind of wide, big ocean, trying to sort of shadow these cruisers and battleships, which can obviously cut through the waves much more effectively than a very small destroyer.
Yeah.
But anyway, at noon on the 24th of May, HMS Eskimo has been detached with the Britannic, which is a troop ship, and sent on to America, while Tartar and Moshona are told to stick with HMS Rodney, the battleship. And Wally always seems to be on watch at night. And he says, there it was like watching a gigantic chess game with the whole North Atlantic as a board, and each unit with the freedom of movement of a queen. but without her devastating disregard for distance. And Wally and crew then all learn about the loss of the Hood that day, the 24th of May, in the forenoon, as they call the morning. He writes, it still does not seem possible that such a big ship with beauty and speed in her lines should suddenly have gone, that our ship's company taking their ease on deck will no more eye her with satisfaction and delight. And I really do think that line kind of sums up what Hood means to Royal Navy crews.
Yeah.
Every single man knows exactly who the Hood is, what it represents, and what this loss means.
But if it means that to naval people, what does it mean in terms of national prestige and politics?
Yeah.
That's what these things are, aren't they? When we talked about the Blitz and about London being bombed and the blow to British power and prestige of the centre of the world's largest empire, its commercial centre being attacked, it's got that kind of resonance, hasn't it?
Yes, and shock.
And shock, absolute shock.
Yeah, and shock when it then goes,
Yeah.
But aboard Tartar, and you can imagine this is replicated across every single warship that's now hurtling towards the Bismarck, there's a sense of new grimness and determination to pursue the Bismarck and avenge the Hood.
Yeah.
So you've now got the situation on the afternoon of the 24th of May, the afternoon of the morning where Hood has been lost, that the gamut of Royal Navy assets are all now being driven towards the Bismarck, but in unseasonably rough seas. So Tartar is hurtling at a maximum speed through the mountain seas. The Strait is rocking up to 50 degrees at times. I mean, can you imagine? So there's little to be feeling cheerful about on Tartar. It's a grim undertaking in grim conditions, but, jaws are set, basically.
Well, of course.
And then there's a moment of intuition, a kind of sixth sense, what we've talked about a lot in other circumstances. And this comes with Admiral Wake Walker, who was the commander of the squadron pursuing the Bismarck.
He thinks to himself, surely she's going to change course. She has to, surely. And Admiral Lütjens on board the Bismarck, he's really aware. He knows he's being pursued. He's got to do everything he can to shake them off. So at 6:39 p.m., and I love how we know this to the minute, it takes a sudden change course. He basically turns round 180 degrees to head in the other direction.
In a fog bank.
Wake Walker, at the same moment, pretty much, has ordered a 360-degree turn. And as the fog clears, Bismarck is just 9 miles away. The fog clears, of course, so that means Bismarck opened fires on the Suffolk, misses, Suffolk scuttles into the fog. But because of Wake Walker's hunch, the Bismarck would have been almost directly upon them and probably blown her out of the water.
Yep.
Suffolk fires 9 broadsides. Norfolk also opened fires, but Prince of Wales guns, which, as we said in the previous episodes, are brand new and aren't quite working, misfire again. So those technicians are, I thought we'd fixed it, boss. But this means that Lütjens figures, and there's intuition in all of this, because they don't know. Lütjens twigs that Suffolk has the radar, and so losing the cruiser in the fog has given Bismarck her brief advantage. And during this firefight, Prince Eugen is able to get away. So the gunnery officer, Fregattenkapitän Jasper, he can see gunfire through the fog and mist as they speed south, as they get out of there. And he says, there goes our big brother. We are going to miss him very, very much. The U-boats aren't too far away, but the Admiralty have noticed the signal traffic, that there's U-boat signal traffic. So it's obvious the U-boats are coming.
Yep.
So they're able to dodge them. So this means that you're still in hot contact with the Bismarck. And here comes the US Coast Guard, James. So, Jim, what we've got here is the US Coast Guard. It's a cutter, the Modoc.
Yes.
And she's an ice patrol boat, 1,800 tons.
Yeah, so she's basically crept up the Canadian coast up towards sort of south of Greenland. This is where she is. So that's why she, as Bismarck and Eugen are kind of emerging out of the Denmark Straits into the wider Atlantic, she's there. She's a small ice patrol boat, but she's out there searching for the survivors of convoy HX-126. And also patrolling as part of the defence of Greenland. And it's about 11:15 p.m. They've seen absolutely nothing for days. And Lieutenant Bacchus, who is the officer of the watch, is doing his usual interminable sweep from the bridge with his binoculars. And then suddenly there it is. There's the Bismarck, kind of this huge figure on the horizon, speeding south. And Bismarck must have sighted Modoc at the same time.
Yeah. Gee, Captain, there's something on the horizon. Oh, my God.
It's a huge, great battleship.
I think it's the Bismarck.
Most of the crew for the Bismarck does no deviation, makes no attempt to engage, recognizes that it's an American ship and a neutral, so just cracks on. And also, it's not going to waste its time on a tiny little poxy 1,800-ton Coast Guard cutter. Most of the crew rush up to see the giant battleship and then see biplanes suddenly appear and swarm towards the Bismarck, followed by Norfolk, Suffolk and the Prince of Wales. And at the same time, Prince of Wales trains her guns towards the Modoc. And Wake Walker is not as well briefed as Lütjens, clearly.
Yeah.
And then, fortunately, in the nick of time, Modoc is identified and back they go. But unknown to Lütjens, Admiral Tovey has sent HMS Victorious ahead. And you'll remember, the Victorious is a brand new aircraft carrier, which is with Tovey's KG-5 and Renown. And it's commanded by Captain Henry Bovell and laid down in 1937, launched in September 1939, but only commissioned into service on the 14th of May. This year, 1941. So this is, like the Bismarck, this is her first wartime operation. It hasn't even probably been worked up yet. And the working up is the process by which you train all the crew, you make sure that everything works, you do your speed runs, you check your, flying on and off and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Find out what's wrong with her.
And it has actually just had 48 crated Hurricanes put on board for Malta. Only 9 Swordfish of 825 Naval Air Squadron and a single flight of Fulmars. So in many ways, it's greener than the Bismarck is. Anyway, Captain Bovell hopes to be within 100 miles of Bismarck by 9 o'clock, but then the battleship diverts to let Prince Eugen go into the open gap. So by 10 p.m., it's still 120 miles away, and this is beyond the operational range that Bovell laid down for his new crew. He thinks should be 100 miles max. But the weather's deteriorating with low cloud and squalls and so on. And of course, they're so high up that it's still light at this time. And the longer Bovell leaves it, the harder it's going to be to find the Bismarck. So there's a sense of mounting urgency to get to her. So he thinks, right, okay, we're just going to have to do it. As soon as we get to 100 miles, off you go, boys. So 825 Squadron is divided into 3 subflights, which are led by Eugene Esmond, Perty Gick, the squadron CO, and Speed Pollard. And of course, he's called Speed because he's
slow,
so lethargic a character. And these are all 3 career Royal Navy, but the only men with any kind of experience. So the rest of the crews are all greenhorns, really.
Yeah.
And they're all briefed by Commander Ranald, who's the flight operations officer, given silhouettes of the Bismarck. Don't get it wrong, this is what it looks like. Don't start bombing Suffolk and Norfolk, what have you. And then they're told about the method of attack. So it just goes to show how green they all are.
Yeah.
And I just want to straighten this out. This is a really, really big ask because the weather's really bad, as we've repeatedly said. They'll be taking off from a swaying carrier, flying 100 miles in decreasing visibility. They then have to find the Bismarck, attack it with its devastating array of anti-aircraft weaponry, then fly back in darkness and land in darkness.
Okay.
And of the 27 aircrew involved, only 3 have any experience.
I'm going to say this right now, Jim. What dams raid? You can keep your dams raid.
It reinforces our love of Swordfish, I'd like to think.
Well, and the Fleet Air Arm crews. The Fleet Air Arm crews have absolutely...
what the heck?
Totally. The cojones on the Fleet Air Arm.
Right, chaps, this is what we're going to do. Just imagine your aircrew there. I'm just thinking, oh, okay.
And Esmond is deeply experienced, though. He's been in for a long time. He's an Irishman from a family of essentially Irish nationalists, but has joined the Fleet Air Arm because he thinks Hitler's a threat to the whole world and all this sort of thing. He's quite the chap, Esmond. He will resurface in when we get round to the Channel Dash as well, because one of the things about the Fleet Air Arm is it's tiny.
Not a lot to go round.
Not a lot to go round. So everyone ends up everywhere doing everything. If you look at the Swordfish crew, everyone ends up on everything. It's quite amazing. So at 10 p.m, Victorious turns to starboard, reduces speed to 15 knots, and off go these 9-4 Swordfish, following Eugene Esmond. Captain Bovell watches them disappear, suspects he'll never see any of them again, which is not unlike Taranto, isn't it? Where they set off with they're thinking the odds are completely stacked against them. They do find the Bismarck, and this is what the Americans on USS Modoc saw with disbelief. And they don't believe it on the Bismarck either. They simply don't believe it. And you have 3rd Gunnery Officer, Captain Lieutenant Burkhard Baron von Mullenheim-Rechberg. It was incredible to see such obsolete-looking planes having the nerve to attack a fire-spitting mountain like the Bismarck. And this is an absolute classic Fleet Air Arm pressing the attack home in spite of the odds. Esmond's flight They come in first. They're very low on the port beam. They're dropping their torpedoes at a half a mile's range. A minute later, Gick's 3 planes are straight on the port bow. Gick's not happy with his run. So what does he do, Jim? He turns round and he does it again.
It's all very Warby-esque, isn't it?
It's all of it. A massive flak from 50 guns. One of the cannon on Bismarck becomes so hot it has to be doused with a water hose. But she manages, and I think this is really interesting, isn't it? Because even with all these aircraft coming at it, they can dodge the torpedoes because she's manoeuvrable. She's sort of nimble enough, for all her size, nimble enough to dodge most of the torpedoes, except one, which is Lieutenant Lawson, who creeps around unnoticed to the starboard side. There he's silhouetted against the setting sun, but manages to drop his torpedo and then zip back up into the safety of the clouds. And this torpedo hits Bismarck amidships on the starboard side, followed by a big burst of black smoke from the funnel. And the Fulmars, who are offering cover for the Swordfish, they see this explosion. And here we go.
I mean, it's just amazing that every single Swordfish managed to get back and land on victorious again, by which time it's dark. I mean, can you imagine?
No.
In this sort of, rising swell, and not a single one shot down, although loads of them are really badly damaged. But because they're canvas, it's a bit like a hurricane, they can take quite a lot of punishment, and they count 175 shrapnel marks on one of them. 175! The reasons why they're not shot down is because the Bismarck is so busy constantly dodging torpedoes. Makes aim very difficult, and also they're so slow. They're allowing far too much deflection in their shooting. So they get away with it.
Their other big advantage, of course, as well as the fabric, is that they have twice as much wing as a monoplane. So you can smash up one of the wings, you've got another 3 basically because they're biplanes. They've just got that much more lift.
But they're heading back to the victorious, and Boville's getting increasingly worried. They should have been back around 1 a.m. he reckons. They're now far further south, so it's now very dark. Then they enter a rain squall. The signal projector's switched on, but visibility is absolutely zero, and the signal lamp can't be seen. And at 1:15, there's still no sign. And then nor is there at 1:30. And at 1:45, there still isn't. And he thinks, well, God, they're 45 minutes late. That's it. My predictions was right. I'm not going to see one of them again. Yep. And Boville and his crew are really depressed about it. And then suddenly at 2 a.m., approaching engines are heard. And Victorious turns into the wind, and one after another, the Swordfish come into land.
Yeah.
3 of the crews have never even done a night landing before. It just begs belief, doesn't it? One engine does cut out the moment it touches down. It's run out of fuel. Lieutenant Gick's air gunner, Petty Officer Sayer, is soaked and be suspended the whole trip back because blast from a 15-inch shell knocked the flooring out from underneath him. So he's just hanging there.
Dear God.
The whole trip back. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
In the dark, in the rain, across the Atlantic. It's just, it's hard to sort of comprehend that, isn't it?
But his membership of the Stoic Club, Sayer's membership of the Stoic Club, is absolutely assured. All the way back, he's saying,
yes,
bloody drafty back here.
Both the Fulmars are lost. One came down in the sea, and incredibly, the crew were picked up by a passing ship, but the other one's lost forever, which is a tragedy. But the Swordfish do get back. And meanwhile, after the near brush with the Modoc, Wake Walker's squadron briefly lose touch of Bismarck for an hour.
Yeah.
So it's all a bit panicky. The Prince of Wales fires off 2 salvos. Bismarck replies with 2, none accurate, and then contact lost again in the dark. Although Suffolk does still have her on radar.
Yeah.
And on Bismarck, the one torpedo causes minor flooding, but really it's barely a scratch. One man is killed in action when he hits his head, caused by the blast of the explosion. And this is Bismarck's first casualty. But huge numbers of empty shell cases. And to keep up morale, Bismarck's loudspeaker announces that they've been attacked by 27 aircraft and shot down 5. They also tell the crew that only one plane had made it back to his carrier. But this is just absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
And while the torpedo attack might not have made a huge amount of difference, earlier damage to the number 2 boiler room from that hit from Prince of Wales in the Battle of the Denmark Strait, that is getting worse.
Yeah.
And it's aggravated by the high-speed twisting and turning during the Swordfish attack, of course. What you really want is just a sort of steady course. You don't want any water coming into that hole and all the rest of it. But the more you're sort of swerving around, the more the whole thing is twisting. And so they have to reduce the speed to try and get the bilge pumps going and get rid of the water that's come on board. And it's not for another hour that they're able to increase speeds again, but only to 20 knots. I mean, they need to be doing 28 or 30.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. And Lütjens now realizes he has to abandon his leisurely course and cut directly towards Brest, which is where they're now going to be heading.
Yeah.
And get there as soon as possible. And it also means no more engagements because they've absolutely got rid of a stack of ammo. And they haven't run out yet, but, keep going at that rate.
Yeah.
It's not going to last.
Yeah. He tends to arrive at the right decision too late, doesn't he, Lütjens? After the event.
Yes.
He should have decided on this sooner.
Yeah.
It's a part of his decision-making, isn't it? That he's one step behind what he ought to be doing. He must know that there are more warships. Every new engagement with the Royal Navy tells him there are more warships coming for him. He knows from Kriegsmarine Group West that Force H has left Gibraltar. So, the trap is closing, isn't it? And as night wears on, it's clear that the shadowing force is falling behind. And they're listening on the hydrophone, and their own radar suggests that the British ships are zigzagging. So he thinks, right, it's my chance to get away, worth a punt. And in fact, actually what they're doing is they're tidying up their course up to 30 degrees either side of, they're basically reorienting themselves based on what the Bismarck's doing. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, with the British ships that furthest away they have been so far, Lindemann orders a sharp turn to starboard, brief increase in speed, and off they go. And this, funnily enough, this works. And Suffolk fails to pick up Bismarck on her inward leg, and she's vanished completely. Yeah. She increases speed, she's listening, but there's nothing. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, so 2 hours later, Captain Ellis on board the Suffolk, and this must have, imagine ordering this signal. Oh, God, you'd have thought, I'm in for a bollocking. He signals Wake Walker, have lost contact with enemy.
And I tell you what my conclusions are on all of this, is that Lindemann is substantially better than Lütjens.
Yes, he's a sharper naval mind, isn't he?
Yeah, and after all, Lütjens was the naval commander at Norway, and he made an absolute arse of it. So Lütjens has turned due west, then northwest, then north, then northeast. He crosses the track of the British squadron 20 miles astern behind them.
Yeah.
So in other words, he's done a big sort of...
Yeah.
So he's done a great big loop. And then he settles on a southeasterly course of 130 degrees. They have outfoxed the British. But it's not Lütjens who's done it. It's Lindemann who's ordered those manoeuvres.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of a calamity for the British. And Beauvais had the Fulmars for searching and observation, but they're very, very inexperienced. It's needle in a haystack stuff. So he sends them out, but the crews are totally equipped for the task and they spot absolutely nothing. So Beauvais then sends off 7 Swordfish at first light to search east and southeast. They're all ready for 7 a.m. departure and planning a course at east and southeast. But at 7:16, they receive the signal from Tovey ordering them to search west and north because Tovey has been told of the loss of contact at 6 a.m. And Tovey reckons that Bismarck most likely heading for France, but needs to eliminate the other options. Are you going back through the Faroes, Shetland Gap, or around the Denmark Straits again, up over the top of Iceland. So if Bismarck is heading for France, she could be bottled up there, and even if she's not sunk en route, but marauding in the Atlantic is absolutely not acceptable. So it's the sort of lesser of two evils, really. Tovey's gut instinct is saying that Bismarck is still heading for France, but what is absolutely unacceptable is allowing her to get out into the Atlantic and maraud. And he doesn't know about the damage to Bismarck. So he just wants to absolutely 100% eliminate any possibility that Bismarck has gone back northwards, which I think is a reasonable decision, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's weighing his options as he sees them.
Yeah.
So he has to make sure that isn't happening. So he orders Swordfish north and west, and this will cover a breakout to the west or a return to Germany via the Denmark Straits. And as we keep saying, the Atlantic is vast. It's enormous.
Yeah.
Forget the fact you can fly there in a matter of hours from Heathrow. It's vast, gigantic, empty space.
Well, yes, and it's worth reiterating that on the bridge of a battleship or a heavy cruiser or something, on a clear day you can see 15 miles.
Yeah.
But on a not clear day, that's probably 6, 7, 5, nothing. Depends. So very tricky.
So at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, May the 25th, the Bismarck is east of all three British forces. Tovey's force is northeast now, having passed 100 miles ahead at around 4 o'clock in the morning. Admiral Curtis's force has crossed Bismarck's wake at around 6 and is now due west of Waite Walker. So the British ships are all steering westerly while the Bismarck carries on southeasterly. So they're all
heading in the wrong direction.
Well, goose chase. So Tovey orders the Prince of Wales to join him with the KG-5 as they're no longer needed to protect Suffolk and Norfolk. The Prince of Wales will take the place of Repulse, which is now low on fuel. Repulse is anyway on her way to Newfoundland for a refit. 400 miles to south, Captain Reed on Ramillies is reacting to the chance that Bismarck is heading to a German oiler near the Azores. East of Ramillies, I mean, there's just so many bits, so many pieces on the. If it is a game of chess, Bismarck is basically, well, was a queen, but is now a king maybe because she can't go at the pace she wants to.
Yep.
And that's the only piece the Germans have. East of Ramillies, Commodore Blackman in the cruiser Edinburgh is also steering northwest along the track where Bismarck was last seen. And they're now on a parallel course to Bismarck, but really well to the west of her. 350 miles southeast of Bismarck, on a line of course to Brest, is the battleship Rodney with 3 destroyers. The destroyer Eskimo is sent on with Britannic to Boston, while other destroyers stick to Rodney.
Yep.
At 7:30 that morning, the Swordfish search starts. So Bovell sets his Swordfish off at 7:30. 4 hours later, six of the 7 return, having found absolutely nothing. One of them's lost, 5H, which is piloted by Sub-Lieutenant Jackson, and the observer is Sub-Lieutenant Beryl, who we described at the start of this episode, and air gunner Leading Airman Sparks. They're lost at sea. It's a fruitless search, this, and it looks like they might be getting away with it.
Well, yes, except Admiral Lütjens then makes another mistake. I mean, how many can be tolerated from this humorless man? At 6:54 a.m. on Sunday, the 25th of May, he thinks they're still being shadowed when they're not. And why he thinks this is not really clear. But anyway, maybe the crew are all knackered. Whatever the reason, Lütjens then sends a signal to Group West because he thinks, well, they already know where I am, so I'm safe to make a signal. So he goes, 1 battleship and 2 heavy cruisers maintaining contact, which they're not. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And they haven't been since 3 a.m. So he sends a second longer signal at 7:48 a.m.
Yeah.
And the latter signal is about the efficiency of British radar, attack on hood, damage to oil tanks, unreliability of Bismarck's own radar. It's all very sort of conversational and chatty. The longer it lasts, the easier it is to intercept. And of course, both signals are picked up by the British.
Yep.
And immediately deciphered, and the bearings are passed on to the operations staff at the Admiralty. And at the Admiralty, Lieutenant Commander Peter Kemp plots the bearings onto a mnemonic chart. And it shows that Bismarck is southeast of its last known position. And Kemp shows these to his superior, who is Rear Admiral Jock Clayton. And he suggests that they should radio these bearings to Tovey immediately. But before setting out, Tovey had asked for bearings only, not a worked out position. So give me the bearings, but don't give me the worked out position. Because obviously it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
So Tovey had 2 destroyers equipped with high-frequency direction finding and expected these to be able to provide the cross bearing, which is what you would need to pinpoint Bismarck.
Yeah.
So Kemp does what he's told, which is to send the bearings only, which reached Tovey just after 10 a.m. But the whole thing is a massive cock-up, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Tovey no longer has his high-frequency direction finding, Huff Duff destroyers with him. They'd headed to Iceland to refuel during the night. And worse, the bearings are plotted incorrectly on the KG-5, on the King George V. So they show that Bismarck is north, not south. And Tovey concludes that Bismarck is now heading to the Faroes Iceland Gap.
Oh, no.
That's not good, is it?
No. So at 10:47, he broadcasts this incorrect position and this incorrect analysis to his fleet. So the KGV, the Prince of Wales, the Victorious, and all of Curtis's cruisers, they all turn northeast to head her off at the wrong pass.
Yep.
And it's only Waite Walker who's still steering towards France. And the Admiralty can't work out what Tovey's doing. And they decide to wait and see, because obviously admirals are allowed quite a degree of latitude, aren't they?
Yep.
So they're thinking maybe he's got some brilliant plan up his sleeve or something. And before insisting that he turns south, and In the meantime, 3 Catalinas from Coastal Command are sent up to search for Bismarck, to see if she's still making for France. I mean, it's interesting. This is just getting all of this to join up is incredibly complex, isn't it?
In this vast sea. I mean,
You can see why cock-up would creep in, but when it does, it's like, oh my, it's sort of maddening, isn't it? And at 10:54, the Admiralty, they receive another Huff Duff fix on the Bismarck, which again confirms she's heading towards France, and another at 1:20, although this is based on a U-boat which has been mistaken for a surface vessel, but it's heading towards France. So they then signal both plotted positions. They give Tovey the news, not in the form he wants, but in the form they need him to have on the KGV. And he receives the first position at 2:01 p.m. He takes his time to make his mind up. At 3:48 p.m, he orders his fleet to turn immediately round to the east-southeast. Then there's an intercepted signal to Rodney from the Admiralty cancelling the earlier order to steer for France. So there's just this cock up on cock up. And I think, but this is also a mark of the state of emergency that the Navy's in, isn't it? With Bismarck on the loose, and the fact they've lost contact with her is, it's not panic as such, but there's a sense of do something now going on. Tovey is in turn baffled. So the Admiralty were baffled by Tovey earlier. Now Tovey's baffled by the Admiralty.
Yes, and the problem is things are moving all the time, but the signals take time to kind of come in, get deciphered, passed up to the bridge and all the rest of it. You know, it can take quite a long time. And so no one's speaking straight. They're all, you know, they're all slightly sort of befuddled by what's going on. And the first befuddlement prompts an odd response, which then prompts another odd response back at the original source of the first befuddlement, and so it kind of escalates. So, you know, that's the problem with all this.
And everyone's second guessing everyone else's movements anyway. So so we've talked so much about instinct and intuition. These admirals are also acting on their instinct, their intuition, and in a very, very information poor environment. That's the nub of it. So this means, though, for the second half of the morning, the rest of the afternoon on Sunday, Tovey and Lütjens are sailing away from one another.
Well, not exactly, because Tovey's taking a bearing of 80 degrees, which is, so they're kind of sort of, Bismarck is going kind of that way.
Down towards 5 o'clock.
Tovey's heading almost due east, and Bismarck is heading sort of southeast. And that's a compromised bearing, because what he's thinking is, if I just go east, then at least I'm going in the right direction, but I can swivel north if I have to, up towards the Faroe Shetland Gap, or I can turn south. So because his hunch is that the Bismarck, and it always has been his hunch, is that Bismarck is heading towards France. It's just he's trying to cover all eventualities, and then there's been this confusion with all the signals and all the rest of it. But he hasn't completely blown it by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, you know, we're talking about a comparatively small period of time, and you know, the distances are huge, and these ships are not that quick, and so it's not too late to sort things out, rectify this. But obviously, with every passing hour, Bismarck is getting closer to France and to escape.
Well, relative safety, because it's no picnic in Brest itself.
No.
Now, what's wonderful though, Jim, is this Sunday is Admiral Lütjens' 52nd birthday. So what a wonderful way to spend your birthday. He receives...
Yes, although his mind isn't on birthdays, it's on the seriousness of the situation in which he finds himself. He gets lots of birthday wishes and all the rest of it, but it's true that most of the crew don't really like him. They like Captain Lindemann, but they don't like Lütjens. They find him stiff and humorless, and they don't trust his judgment. And frankly, you know, fair enough. And there is a general feeling amongst the crew that he should have turned back up the Denmark Straits, because everyone knows about the low fuel situation. And late that morning, they hear from Group West that the last British shadowing report had been at 3:13 a.m. So then there's huge relief, because they realise that they have actually shaken them off. But I wonder whether Lütjens is thinking, I shouldn't really have sent that signal, those two signals. But anyway, all the crew have been on action stations for 36 hours, so they're now stood down. Lütjens gets his birthday wishes from Hitler. Well, that's nice of him. But he's very much still sighing, I would say. He knows he's got 1,000+ miles to go and is far from being out of the woods. And he also knows from the volume of intercepted British radio traffic that they are absolutely searching for them. And at midday, Lütjens addresses the crew. He thanks them for their birthday wishes and for the part in sinking the Hood. And then he speaks of the danger ahead. The British are massing their forces to destroy us, and we shall have another battle with them before we reach home. It may well be a question of victory or death. If we have to die, let us take with us as many of the enemy as we can. And you can imagine how that cheers everyone up, can't you?
Oh, that's stirring stuff, isn't it? I mean,
That's an inspirational Nelsonic, Nelsonian style pep talk to buck the lads. I mean,
if we have to die, let us take with us as many of the enemies we can. Is not really. This is all going to work out. Don't you worry.
I really think he's rubbish. I just think he's absolutely dreadful. Anyway, so Tovey is increasingly perplexed by signals from the Admiralty, isn't he?
Yes, and by mid-afternoon, he's realised the plotting mistake earlier, and he asks for clarification again from the Admiralty. He doesn't get a reply, so after an hour and a half, he makes a call and turns southeast and lets the Admiralty know that he's decided to do that. So we're kind of back on course now, but his ships are short of fuel. Suffolk has had to peel away, is going back to Scapa Flow. Prince of Wales, she's heading for Iceland to refuel. Admiral Curtis's cruisers are also getting low. The King George V carries on. And the Admiralty now, though, has accepted that Bismarck has to be steering for France. I mean, she can't be going anywhere else.
No.
Waite Walker's in a dilemma. Should he keep going or risk running out of fuel? His gut instinct tells him to keep going. And he tells Captain Phillips on the Norfolk to turn southeast at 26 knots. Sees the Prince of Wales and signals, I am going towards Brest. So it's on now.
So Waite Walker, he's consistently good, isn't he? I mean, you know, it's his hunch that gets them moving at the right time. I mean, he's the man.
Yes.
So they're now on the same course. Norfolk and the King George V are on the same course as Bismarck, but 150 miles behind.
And this means for all the confusion and mixed messages and second guessing and circling that might look like dithering, they are now. It's all sorted by late afternoon on Sunday, the 25th of May. The collision course is on.
Yeah.
And in Brest, massive preparations, frantic preparations for the arrival of Bismarck. I mean, where else did they expect it? Did they really think she'd sail out through the Denmark Straits, bash up a couple of convoys and send back through the Denmark Straits and back to Kiel or something? Is that? I mean, what did they think?
Really weird, isn't it?
This is all picked up by a French spy, Lieutenant Jean Philippon of the French Navy. His codename is Hilarion, and he manages to get a written message on a train to Paris to be forwarded to London.
Good man.
This means that, though, that the chase is now actually on, now that it's known for sure where Bismarck's headed. Tovey needs destroyers. He needs them right now because the King George V and Repulse are vulnerable without destroyers to screen them.
Yeah. And
the only destroyers available are Captain Philip Vian's force, who are currently escorting troop convoy WS-8B. And he has at his disposal Cossack, Zulu, Sikh, Maori, and the Polish destroyer Pirun.
And these are all tribal class destroyers.
So they're the latest thing. And there are no reports of U-boats nearby. So Vian decides, all right, we'll join the KG-5. And he's an extremely experienced, tough guy. He'd been at Altmark the previous years and super experienced. Another pocket Nelson. And he receives his orders in the middle of the night, the 25th, 26th. So once everyone knows where everyone's headed, sets course at 27 knots, straight into the wind. It's a long night on the open bridge of these tribal class. He says, reports reached me of men being hurt. In one case, one being washed overboard, but there was nothing to be done. I mean, steam on.
Oh, well, part and parcel of the tribal class destroyer's life. Lose the odd chap.
Lose the odd chap, but full steam ahead, literally. And she's the Bismarck.
A bit of regret, and then never think about it again.
Yes, mentally write the letter. Bismarck is steaming slower than her pursuers, so the gap of 150 miles isn't really a disaster. And, you know, as we said, she's sort of limping on now because the damage has been exacerbated by the Swordfish attack to her boilers. But the British have a feeling that time's running out. If she can get to Brest, you know, it will have gone wrong. So we come to dawn on Monday, the 26th of May. It's a wild grey sea. If you're on the bridge of the Bismarck, you can't see anything else. There's no other ships out there.
No.
It's 24 hours since Lütjens told everyone that they were probably going to die. They're 400 miles near a port.
Oh, dear.
Oh, no. Ach, nein. So,
Yeah.
and they're starting to get their hopes up on the Bismarck. But what they don't know, and what we know, though, is that a Catalina, an RAF Catalina Z from 209 Squadron Coastal Command, is heading out towards the Bismarck. And the crew on the Bismarck, Lütjens on the Bismarck, Lindemann thinking, well, maybe we've got away with this. We've got 400 miles to go.
But the reason they're there, of course, and they're going on the course they're going is because of decisions made the previous afternoon. So the Admiralty operations staff are planning air patrols for the following day because there's this harmony between RAF Coastal Command and the Admiralty. And they're working very much in tandem and working very well. And the deal is the RAF Coastal Command stays RAF and does its own thing. But decisions on targets is made by the Admiralty.
Yeah.
So it's 12 hours at the point that they're making this decision since losing contact with the Bismarck. And everyone's really worried that they're losing her for good. And all are struck by the tininess of even very large ships and the enormity of the ocean, of course. So they draw up plans, which are then passed to Captain Charles Meynell, RN, who is the liaison officer at RAF Coastal Command headquarters. And Meynell then takes these plans, these suggestions, to Air Marshal Sir Frederick Bowhill, who is the Commander-in-Chief of RAF Coastal Command. Now, Bowhill's a really interesting guy because he reckons that Navy suggestions are logical should Bismarck be heading to France. But would Bismarck do the logical thing? Bowhill's an old sailor. He spent 22 years in the Merchant Navy and then in the Royal Navy. He'd sailed around the Cape Horn under sail. You know, anyone who's watched Master and Commander will know in a sailing boat that's not an easy undertaking. And in the First World War, he's commanded a seaplane carrier, the HMS Empress. And his gut instinct, a bit like Wade Walker's gut instinct in the previous episode, tells him that a direct route is unlikely because it's just so obvious.
Yeah.
And it's also too close to the British airfields. So he's thinking, God, what would I do if I was a German admiral? I mean, you know, he's dealing with Lütjens, who's
useless.
Not the best, it has to be said. But anyway, he's thinking, well, I would steer more towards northern Spain and then turn east to France. So he suggests to Meynell that they add an extra patrol to cover this course.
Right.
And Meynell telephones this suggestion to the Admiralty, and the Admiralty go, yep, okay, fine, as long as it doesn't interfere with the other planned patrols. And Bowhill goes, no, we can do this because 209 Squadron's got a number of Catalinas, and not least Catalina Z, which is given the instructions to fly on this slightly different course. And Catalina Z has quite an interesting crew, doesn't it, Al?
Yeah. Well, on board is Ensign Leonard Tuck Smith, who's an American and a farmer's son from Higginsville, Missouri.
Yes.
And he's trained as a pilot in the U.S. Naval Reserve in 1938. By 1939, he's the second pilot and navigator in a squadron of Catalinas based in Seattle.
Yes.
And in early 1941, the U.S. government asks for volunteers to train Brits on Catalinas. Smith volunteers. He's sent to Washington.
PBYs is their name, aren't they, by Americans?
He volunteers. He's sent to Washington with 16 others. And the chief of the naval ops tells them, boys, we're going to war soon with Germany and Japan, but we haven't fixed the date yet, so we want you to go over there and learn all you can about it. That's straight out of a movie. We haven't fixed the date. Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just great. Why is it that American commanders always speak in cliches?
Maybe they go cliche course.
But it's fantastic, isn't it?
Unless you guys are talking Turkey and cliche, there ain't no point in none of it. So the first three of this cadre, including Tuck Smith, they fly to Bermuda, they pick up Catalinas and they fly on to the UK. They land on the Clyde at Greenock on the 5th of May, the same day that Hitler has inspected the Bismarck. Dankeschön. From there, he's posted to he's posted to Loch Earn in Northern Ireland to join Coastal Command as special observers.
In inverted commas.
Yeah, riding shotgun, basically. Smith's posted as a co-pilot to Catalina Z in 209 Squadron alongside flying officer Dennis Briggs, who's the first pilot. These planes are extraordinary, aren't they? Because they carry so much fuel.
Have you ever seen one fly?
I have, yeah. Yeah. I saw one fly over the Chalk Valley.
Of course.
They look like a sort of dragonfly in motion.
Yes, they do a bit.
They do look like they shouldn't be able to get off the ground. Sometimes you see an aeroplane and think there's no way that should fly. I think the Catalina kind of has that quality. They have extraordinary range, don't they? This is absolutely amazing.
They do.
1,750 gallons of fuel, so they can fly for 28 hours.
I mean, what?
Yeah, that's extraordinary, isn't it? And so the crew would double up. They'd take food and drink with them and a primus stove, and they'd take shifts. And it's cramped and noisy and horrible. And you do a 3-hour watch as you toddled around, sort of loitering, looking for stuff.
And you absolutely need a pilot and co-pilot for that reason.
So they take off, 3 hours, they fly steadily southwest. Dawn breaks. Those who are on watch have some breakfast, eggs and bacon.
Yeah, because they've taken off at 2 a.m., haven't they?
Yeah.
They're not very hopeful. I don't think there's much chance of finding it.
No, and there's a bet in the crew, a pack of 20 fags that she won't find Bismarck. And at 9:45, they're in the area of the planned search, the grid they're going to do. And Smith moves into Briggs' seat. Briggs takes over as second pilot. It's hazy, it's a rough sea, low visibility. And half an hour later, Smith's flying low at 500 feet under the cloud base because they've got to try and get eyes on one way or another, haven't they? So even when there's low cloud, they've got to get in under it.
Yep.
Briggs spots something up ahead. What's that?
Gee, what's that?
Hold on. Do you see something? What's that? Holy moly. They see about 8 miles away a dull, dark shape. And Smith banks, and his idea is he'll come out the stern of the ship, but the clouds part at 2,000 feet, and there she is, only 500 yards away. Ah!
Bismarck opens fire. Of course it does. A sort of clatter of shrapnel on the side of the Catalina, and Smith pulls up and banks violently. One crewman falls out of the bunk, another in the galley drops 2 plates of eggs and bacon, and Briggs is frantically trying to send messages before being shot down.
Yeah.
But they get away, and Briggs does send the signal, and the signal is this: one battleship bearing 240 degrees, 5 miles, course 150 degrees, my position 49:33 north, 21:47 west, time of origin 10:30:26.
Amazing.
That's about as specific as you can be, isn't it?
That'll do it.
Yep, and both the Germans and the British decode this in minutes. So Bismarck is now 690 miles from Brest.
And obviously, there's some fuss and rustle at the Admiralty because this means Rodney and her destroyers have missed Bismarck the day before by only 50 miles.
Darn it.
The HMS Edinburgh, by only 45 miles. Vine's destroyers have crossed her wake that morning by only 30 miles. And so on HMS Tartar, which is one of the tribal class destroyers, the news is received with relief and regret. And George Wally, who we had in our previous episode, notes that the captain, Commander Lionel Peyton Skipwith. I mean, come on.
That's a name, isn't it? I know. I want to serve under him.
The names of the ships are like one slice of another time. So are the names of the captains. Peyton Skipwith had predicted Bismarck taking the very route it had. All disappointment was forgotten now, says George Wally. The net was closing rapidly, but it was an anxious afternoon while we waited for the air reports.
Yeah, so suddenly everyone's sort of G'd up. There's this, but well, you could just imagine it, can't you, on all the crews? Everyone's sort of feeling a little bit kind of, darn it, have we missed the boat?
Yeah.
Have we kind of missed our chance? And then suddenly, no, it's on again. And everyone's thinking, everyone's doing their mental calculations, aren't they? And they're thinking, okay, well, if it's there and we're here, we got some catching up to do. We can do this, but fuel's running low. It's going to be nip and tuck. But you know, if we play a blinder, we can just about do it. You know, come on, boys, let's really focus, really concentrate. And what we really need to do more than anything else is somehow slow down the Bismarck to give us the chance to catch up, because King George V is 135 miles to the north. Rodney's 125 miles to the northeast. You know, they're probably not going to be able to catch up. So let's try and slow her down. Now, Captain Vian and his tribal class, his racist class destroyers. And Vian immediately alters course without orders. As soon as he hears the message, he doesn't wait for any orders because he's Nelsonian.
Yep.
And so he just goes for it and heads for the interception. 600 miles to the south was the cruiser Dorsetshire. Captain Ben Martin also had 8 torpedoes on his cruiser, and he abandons the merchant cruiser he's escorting, also without permission, and just goes for it. And, you know, and they're clearly both remembering their Nelson line, which is no captain can do very wrong if he lays his ship alongside that of an enemy. In other words, be aggressive, go for it, take the initiative. You know, it is so the opposite of the British Army generals, isn't it, at this time of the war?
Yes.
But there's no question that the best means of slowing down the Bismarck is Admiral Somerville's Force H, and especially HMS Ark Royal, which is the carrier he's got with him. And Somerville is quite the man. We've mentioned him a few times in the past. He's hugely experienced, and there's a great line about him in his biography, which says, "A schoolboyish approach to all things, a youthful zest and sense of fun, combining with an uninhibited simplicity of expression, an unconscious urge to be at the centre of the stage and act the unorthodox admiral at all levels. These were important ingredients in his makeup as a leader, and brought him enemies as well as friends." I mean, if that's not Nelsonian, I don't know what is.
I love him. He sounds fantastic.
I mean, you could be describing Nelson there, couldn't you?
Yeah.
But it underlines that these guys are really good.
Yeah.
I mean, the commanders are all hugely experienced. They've got to where they've got to on merit. You've got the cream of some of the cream of the world's navies here, all homing in on Bismarck. And now they know where it is. Okay, so Bismarck's out of range of some of the battleships. We need to slow it down. And you can bet your bottom dollar they're somehow going to do it.
So, on the night of the 25th, 26th May, Somerville orders his first patrol of Swordfish from Ark Royal for dawn, but they're sailing into a very, very strong headwind. This is a rotten late spring, early summer patch of weather, isn't it?
Yep.
At 11:15 p.m, they have to reduce to 23 knots, 11:40 to 21 knots. By dawn, they're only doing 17 because the weather is absolutely diabolical. And Ark Royal's getting on, isn't she? She's not had a refit for 100,000 nautical miles. And dawn breaks on Force H to reveal this absolutely, it's a storm. It's a storm-tossed sea. There's whitecaps, 4-story high waves. She's sailing into the wind. She's rolling as well. And the wind speed over the deck is 50 miles an hour. Absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, and the other thing is the deck is 60 feet above the waterline, but it's still being drenched. I mean, that is something, isn't it? The carrier itself is rolling, so going like this. Up to 30 degrees.
Yeah.
They're struggling to keep the Swordfish on the deck, let alone take off from it.
But thank God you've got Swordfish in this situation and not some sea fires or whatever. You need something that can get airborne in this...
insane weather conditions, yeah.
Well, it's thanks to the Air Ministry being crap during the 1930s that we've ended up with an aeroplane that can deal with these situations. And it's bad. At 8:45 that morning, the 26th, Captain Maund of the Ark Royal, he reduces speed to 10 knots. Turns the ship directly into the wind. Now the rolling gives way to the pitching because the wind's almost hurricane force. And on Renown, Somerville has his binoculars trained on the flight deck. If you're taking off these conditions, you have to wait for the bow to start rising, gun the throttle, and hope that you get off before the bow pitches again and you basically fly into the sea, which when we talked about North Atlantic Convoy, that happened. Aircraft would mistime it and go into the drink. So... Off goes one aircraft just as a wave sweeps past, amazingly gets airborne and clear. And one by one, the others follow, despite most skimming the water as they clear the end of the ship. I mean,
I know. It is absolutely mind-boggling, isn't it?
And in the movie, if people have seen Sink the Bismarck, the Swordfish are depicted, but obviously they can't reproduce these conditions in the film, that like how absolutely diabolic it was getting off Ark Royal. Maund obviously thinks, well, we've sent them on their way, but don't know how we'll ever get them back on board ever again, and then they're probably not coming back anyway. It's extraordinary. So off goes the Swordfish patrol. So Force H hears of the sighting of Bismarck 90 minutes later. The aircraft are immediately recalled to be armed with torpedoes, although two of them, 2H and 2F, are ordered to look for the Bismarck. So Sub-Lieutenant Hartley in 2H.
So when they're taking off that morning, they're taking off on a patrol, on a search patrol. So Swordfish 2H and 2F, they're looking. This is Sub-Lieutenant Hartley in 2H found Bismarck first, but reported it to be the Prinz Eugen. No! Then 7 minutes later, Sub-Lieutenant Callender in 2F also spots her, but reports her to be a battleship. So which is it? It's vital to know, because obviously a cruiser has a shallower depth settings for torpedoes. But anyway, Somerville decides to send 2 more Swordfish with long-range tanks to take off and relieve 2H and 2F and hopefully confirm the sighting.
Yeah.
So which one is it? So Ark Royal is now steaming at high speed on a parallel course to Bismarck, and only 50 miles to the south on a converging course.
Wow.
I mean, is that amazing?
Although the last thing Ark Royal wants to do is get within range of her guns, so she can't get too close.
No, exactly. So the Ark Royal then turns northwest to allow the returning Swordfish to land. And despite the carrier still pitching, all the returning Swordfish make it. Only one gets smashed up on landing, but the crew are all unhurt. I mean, it's a miracle, isn't it, in those conditions?
I don't think you're overdoing it using that word. I really don't.
The Admiralty now orders Somerville, the cruiser Renown, not to engage the Bismarck unless the King George V and the Rodney are already doing so. But it doesn't mention the Sheffield, who is part of Force H. So at 1:15 that Monday, the 26th of May, Somerville orders the Sheffield to steer for Bismarck, which is now only 40 miles away. Somerville then does inform Tovey and the Admiralty and also Ark Royal, but the signal is not immediately deciphered on the Ark Royal. So the Swordfish about to take off for Bismarck don't know that Sheffield is on the way to intercept Bismarck. And I don't know about you, but I can sense that something might go wrong.
Well, what could possibly go wrong, Jim? Sheffield is intercepting on her way to intercept Bismarck. Ark Royal doesn't know. Ark Royal is dispatching her Swordfish to attack Bismarck. And mere moments ago in the story, Sub-Lieutenant Hartley misidentified the Bismarck as the Prince Eugen, right? So these pilots may be extremely brave, but they can't necessarily identify ships in these conditions. So...
Well, they all look the same, don't they?
Particularly the distance. And particularly if they've painted their swastikas out. Bismarck has made sure she's less identifiable. So at 2:15, the Swordfish start coming up in the lifts onto the deck of the Ark Royal. They're really not sure if it's Bismarck or not, so their torpedoes are set to run at 30, not 34 feet. And they're fitted with magnetic pistols designed to trigger explosions under the enemy's hull.
Yes, and this is important.
Not the duplex double strike thing that they used at Taranto, where if it's a strike or a magnetic signal. At 2:40, they start their engines. At 2:50, Lieutenant Commander Stuart Moore in Swordfish 4A takes off. 14 others follow. And the weather is slightly better, isn't it? It's not as ghastly as the morning's patrol. So an hour passes. And you imagine what these hours are like on board aircraft carriers. I'm sure many of the listeners remember I counted them all out. I counted them back in. That from the Falklands War. That sense of anticipation, your heart in your mouth, just not knowing at all how it might have turned out and what the odds are when they get there and all that sort of stuff. Captain Maund and Commander Trail, who's the flight ops commander, they wait for news. Then the signal officer appears waving a decoded signal about Sheffield. Maund, of course, is imperturbable, such is the style of the Royal Navy, turns to the signal officer and says, "Look out for Sheffield. There's no time to cipher it. Make it in plain language. Make it now."
Meanwhile,
Christ.
all morning and early afternoon, Tovey and his force are clearly, slowly but surely catching up because of the slow speed of the Bismarck.
Yeah.
When they're thinking they're not going to be able to catch her, it's because they don't know that Bismarck's only doing about 22 knots. So in 24 hours' time, Bismarck would be within range of the enemy shore-based aircraft. Yep. And the King George V would have to turn for fuel. So the clock is ticking inexorably, but they are getting closer. But will they get close enough? That's the key thing. And this is why there's so much emphasis on the Swordfish striking the Bismarck and slowing her down. Yeah. Anyway, meanwhile, Catalina M of 240 Squadron, Coastal Command, has also now found the Bismarck thanks to Briggs's signal and has kept in contact with the German battleship all that afternoon. And, every so often they get a little bit too close and there's a bit of anti-aircraft fire from the Bismarck. But this is really good for kind of damaging the morale of the crew of the Bismarck because they know they're being shadowed. They know that they've got their number. Yeah. And on board is a second US Navy pilot, Jimmy Johnson, with Flying Officer Goulden. They have to return eventually, and at 6 p.m. they turn for home. But by then, long-range Swordfish had taken over. Yeah. So the Bismarck is now in their sights all the time, and no one's letting it go. And that same evening, the King George V and Rodney meet up and decide to continue together. They're now only 90 miles from Bismarck and Force H, but they have no news of the Swordfish strike from Ark Royal, and 90 miles is still considered far too far to overhaul. Yep. And Tovey is getting a little bit impatient. He wants news. And at 6:21 p.m., Tovey signals to the Admiralty and to Somerville saying that unless Bismarck's speed can be reduced by midnight, then he will have to return to harbour for fuel. Rodney, on the other hand, can continue until 8 a.m. on the 27th of May, but that's it. So the time pressure is really on now. Yeah. And then 10 minutes pass. And at 6:31 p.m., the hammer blow arrives. A terse signal comes from Somerville. From Flag Officer Force H to C&C Home Fleet, estimate, no hits.
Well, yes.
Can it really be? Now we're going to recap and explain what did happen to the Swordfish, because they've taken off at 2:50 p.m.
Yep.
Several are now equipped with radar. Can it be really true that fairy Swordfish biplanes could be equipped with radar? I mean, talk about kind of contrast. But anyway, they are. On this radar, they pick up the ship sooner than they're expecting. But what they don't realise is they picked up Sheffield, not Bismarck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Captain Charles Larkham is on the bridge of the Sheffield and sees them. He'd been expecting them, but then realises they're about to attack. So he thinks, no, you can't do this. Immediately orders his gun crew not to open fire, opens up to full speed as the first torpedo is dropped, then turns wheel hard to avoid it, and he does. And the second Swordfish then comes into attack by torpedo. But the torpedo explodes the moment it hits the water, and so does the third. Oh. So clearly something is up with the magnetic pistols on these torpedoes. Yeah. And 5 to 6 more are launched successfully, and Sheffield manages to dodge every single one of them. And only 3 of the Swordfish realise Sheffield is not the Bismarck. And another sees at what they've done after they've dropped the torpedo and signals down to the Sheffield, "Sorry for the kipper," by lamp, and then disappears off towards the Ark Royal. I mean, isn't that amazing?
I think every blunder I make from now on will be referred to as a kipper. I think that's
Yeah, sorry for the kipper.
Sorry for the kipper.
No, that's got to be a T-shirt, hasn't it?
That's got to be a T-shirt. Sorry for the kipper. And extraordinarily, they were all returned to Ark Royal. The 3 who haven't attacked the shiny chef, they ditched their torpedoes. And they're despondent. But actually, what this means is
it's a bit of a blessing.
They realise that the magnetic pistols aren't any good. So they're going to switch to contact pistols with a depth setting of 22 feet. They all now know exactly what the Sheffield looks like as well. I think there's also that to bear in mind.
Yes.
Morn then signals Somerville. He's going to send another strike force. He's going to go round again. Because they're not that far away is the thing. They can actually do this. It's not such a journey, is it? Somerville signals this to the Admiralty and to Tovey, but Tovey's not much cheered about that, and he doesn't know about...
Well, he just thinks, well, they've already done one strike.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know that they've tried to attack the Sheffield.
Yeah. Probably best not to
So
tell
he
him,
just
right?
thinks this hasn't worked, because what he's got is a signal that says no estimate, no hit. So he thinks, well, they didn't hit first time. Why would they hit a second time?
Yeah. They're very gloomy on the Bismarck because they know they've been spotted. They know they're being shadowed. But because nothing's happened, they sort of think, well, maybe we will get away with it. I mean, there's a lot of wishful thinking going on.
Darkness will fall. They're getting further south. So darkness is coming quicker.
The last torpedo attack they suffered didn't do them too much harm, as we explained in the last episode.
Well, and they've got this huge waist armour, haven't they?
Yeah.
Where belt armour, which is, designed to be impermeable to torpedoes.
Yeah.
So.
And at Brest, they're going absolutely crazy getting ready for the Bismarck. Goering, of course, has ordered maximum air assistance, which obviously, as experienced Goering watchers will know, that might mean something happens. It might mean something doesn't happen. I mean, it can mean literally anything, can't it? Dönitz orders his U-boats also to give the Bismarck every help, although U-boats doing 5 knots above water, on the surface 2 knots below. They're not going to be able to steam radically quickly to any situation, are they?
Yep.
Is the truth. So there we go. There's 2 symbolic gestures from the Nazi High Command. Luftwaffe Condors have spotted the Rodney and 3 destroyers 200 miles north of the Bismarck in the afternoon. So they think, well, maybe there aren't ships that are going to catch her first.
And just to remind people, Condors are the Fokker-Wulfs.
4-engine airliner thing, yeah. And in fact, actually, incredibly effective when used properly, because long-range aircraft that can spot stuff, but the decision to use them effectively has to be made. In the late afternoon, reports come in of a shadowing cruiser. Lütjens knows this must be from Force H and that Ark Royal and Renown have to be closing in. He suspects that Ark Royal is waiting for the fading light to attack because the days are slightly getting shorter now, they're further south. This means high-speed manoeuvring, and they don't have the fuel for high-speed manoeuvring. And fuel's a big problem. Remember, they didn't refuel when they had the opportunity. They didn't re-oil, did they? When they had
opportunities. Two opportunities. They passed re-oil. Lütjens' decision again.
Yeah. And he's thinking, maybe a tanker can meet us. So he signals to Kriegsmarine Group West, fuel situation urgent. When can I expect fuel?
Hurry up.
It's hopeless, isn't it?
And literally, he's only just sent this signal off, then suddenly the alarm rings out over the whole ship. Frederica! And this is attack by enemy aircraft imminent. That's what that Frederica means.
God.
So There's problems with the Ark Royal's engines. The lack of servicing is coming back to haunt them a little bit.
Yeah.
So lubricating oil from the main circulator is caught on fire. So saltwater hoses dousing the flames and red hot parts are covered in olive oil. I mean, can you believe it? Talk about make, do, and mend. And somehow it does the trick, and Ark Royal is able to continue making 25 knots, which is obviously going some for a ship of that size. But it then has to slow down for the Swordfish to take off. But it's now 7:10 p.m. and they are now 100 miles northwest of Bismarck.
Right.
So the 15 Swordfish are led by Lieutenant Commander Tim Coode. And you'll remember that we had that extract at the beginning of this episode with Stuart Moore as second in command. And the weather is still pretty rough.
Yep.
Cloud base only 600 feet, angry seas, frequent rainstorms. They form up once they're airborne in line astern in 6 subflights of 2s and 3s. And this time they're briefed to make for Sheffield, then get from her Bismarck's precise position. So they pick up Sheffield at 8 p.m. and then lose her and then pick her up again at 8:35 p.m. And Captain Larcom then signals to Coode, the enemy is 12 miles dead ahead. So they now know where they've got to go. No more friendly fire. Everything's sorted. Should be plain sailing, right?
Well, you'd think. Over Sheffield, the weather's good. Cloud base is 2,000 feet. It's rising to 5,000. But over Bismarck, incredibly, she's hidden by a wall of cloud that rises to the surface to 10,000 feet. So
Drat.
the desired attack is a coordinated attack from lots of different angles, but there's no chance of that because they can't see.
No.
So they simply attack down through the cloud. And I think, again, the guts of these Fleet Air Arm guys. The first sub-flight go in, plus another that's latched onto them, and they emerge at 700 feet astern of the Bismarck with her 4 miles ahead. They can't attack upwind, so they bank to port. They climb back into the cloud and try again. So it's interesting, isn't it? They're not just going to go in willy-nilly. They want to get it right. And they've got the time and the fuel to be considered about this.
Well, and they've all been told of the importance of this mission. I don't want to understate it, men, but the fate of the Atlantic War and entire war is dependent on you slowing down the Bismarck. So don't cock it up.
Don't fuck it up, chaps. On Sheffield's bridge, Larcom and his officers, they see the first stabs from Bismarck's guns at 8:53
PM.
Yeah. That's when Bismarck first gets under attack. Ark Royal has actually, in the meantime, had a lucky escape. She's gone straight over U-556. We were saying a moment ago, what can U-boats do in this situation? Well, not a lot if they haven't got any torpedoes, even if they do find one of these capital ships. On the King George V, Tovey continues to exude calm and confidence. His officers in the plotting room are waiting patiently for news. Eventually, the buzzer from the radio officer rings. The signal's passed on from the leader of the striking force. Estimate no hits. Tovey takes this well, though, doesn't he? I mean, this is interesting.
Well, he's imperturbable. Of course he does. Maybe just a slight twitch of a cheek muscle.
Yeah. And on Rodney, here's another captain who's been sent to us direct from Central Casting. Captain Dalrymple Hamilton decides to address the crew over the Tannoy. I'm very sorry to tell you that we've just received a signal that the second Swordfish attack on the Bismarck has been completed and there have been no hits. As a result, we have lost our chance of slowing down the enemy and bringing him to action. But despite this, they steam on. There's another signal from Sheffield. Enemy's course, 340 degrees.
What? Why? This makes no sense. 340 degrees means it's heading almost north. Makes no sense. Why would it be?
Yeah.
So Tovey is completely dumbfounded. It means the Bismarck is now sailing directly towards him. It makes absolutely no sense. So he assumes that Larcom must have made a reciprocal mistake. But then another signal arrives, reporting that Bismarck has been steering due north. What's going on here? But by this point, the second signal, there could be absolutely no doubt about it. So something very seriously wrong with Bismarck. And so having all hope being lost, suddenly hope is reignited. And what's happened is that after Coode's failed attack, the rest of the Swordfish also attack. And number 2 subflight is led by Lieutenant Feather Godfrey Fawcett. And they attack and thought they'd hit. And then number 3 and number 4 subflights also come out of the cloud astern of Bismarck. And one plane is absolutely spattered and pilot and the air gunner are wounded, but they keep on flying. All drop their torpedoes, but claim no hits. But Tony Beale, meanwhile, has emerged out of the clouds, spotted Bismarck, retreated again, and worked round to the battleship's port side. So Beale turns and makes a long upwind attack at 50 feet off the water, dropping his torpedo not at 900 yards, but at 800 yards. And Bismarck doesn't fire. Attention's all on the starboard side, of course, because that's where it's mainly being attacked. So they haven't seen him come around the back entrance. And only once they've turned away again does Bismarck's flak open up against her, and the deck seem alive with fire. And Beale's observer was Sub-Lieutenant Friend and watched for an explosion while leading airman Pimlott hammered away on his MG. I mean, obviously he's not going to do anything, but it's kind of more a sense of taking the attack to the enemy without any real hope of hitting. But then Friend spots a pume of water rise on the port side amidships, and all three crew see this hit. So they have got a hit. And then Lieutenant Owen Smith of number 5 subflight thought he saw a strike rise up on Bismarck's starboard side, right aft, just as Godfrey Fawcett and Patterson were withdrawing. So no strikes at all were seen from number 5 and number 6 subflights. So presumably they're also unsuccessful. So the attack, which has begun just before 9 p.m, is all over half an hour later. And the Swordfish fly back over Sheffield and waggle their wings. The crew cheers and, the early mistake has been forgiven. But then, this is the amazing thing, because the last Swordfish has hardly got clear when suddenly Bismarck is seen emerging from a patch of mist and turning to port.
And then there's a burst of black smoke. She's firing a salvo towards Sheffield, but it falls a mile short. Sheffield then makes drastic alterations as Bismarck opens fire again. A gun crew are hit, 12 men are wounded, 5 seriously. Larkham wheels away again, orders smoke and full speed. Sheffield heads west to increase range, but still has the bead on Bismarck, so sent first signal of Bismarck's baffling position. Then the second signal. After that, she loses sight of Bismarck as the enemy steers north on this peculiar course. And a splinter has damaged Sheffield's radar, so they then lose contact with the fall of darkness. The last shadowing Swordfish also returns for home. But something is up on board Bismarck. Bismarck has been struck, and figuring this out is going to be the order of the day.
But darkness is falling. It's dark.
Yeah.
And I've got to kind of try and make sense of it.
Yeah. So Larkham is fearing that Bismarck is going to get away when suddenly, who's this coming up over the hill? It's Vian and his destroyers. Where is the enemy? Signals Vian. The signal he's wanted to send his whole life.
I love this guy.
Yeah. Larkham says, well, roughly over there. Destroyers sweep on. 40 minutes later, the Polish destroyer Pirun signals, enemy in sight. And in the meantime, all 15 Swordfish are back on the Ark Royal, even though the massive swell and in the darkness. Lieutenant Swanton's string bag, 4C, has 175 holes in it. Him and the air gun are both wounded, but, whatever. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And then Tovey and Somerville get the signal they want. Morn, after the debrief, signals a new message which says, estimate 1 hit amidships, possible second hit on starboard quarter.
And of course, it's the second hit that's the key one.
So what's happened to the Bismarck, Jim? What have they done?
Well, Morn's signal is absolutely spot on. The strike amidships has wounded a few men but caused little damage because it's straight into their waist armour. So it's designed to withhold that. But the second strike is hit just as Captain Zerzi Lindemann is turning to port at high speed. And Lindemann ordered the wheel to be centred, but then it refuses to answer. And it becomes quickly clear that the rudder is jammed at 15 degrees and leaning severely to starboard. So Lindemann orders reduction of speed, which allows her to settle to a more even keel, because obviously the faster you're going as you're turning, the more you're going to be tilting. And then the report comes in. And it's at this point that they're firing at Sheffield. The report comes in of the damage. A torpedo has struck the steering gear compartments and flooded them. The 3 propellers, they're okay, but it's the rudder that is jammed at 15 degrees to port. And water is also entering from where the hydrophones have been destroyed and into the port engine room, up the shaft tunnel that led to the props. An ordinary seaman, Bloom, he remembers the training in the Baltic, when the lieutenant had said such a hit was 100,000 to 1 against. Do you remember we were talking about that? When we were doing the Hood versus Bismarck series?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It's 100 to 1,000 to 1 against anything happening. But anyway, what they've got to do clearly is the 100,000 to 1 shot has happened. I mean, talk about a lucky hit that destroys Hood. Yeah. This is a lucky glancing blow that strikes the rudder of the Bismarck just as it's turning. So it just clips it at the end.
Yeah.
they've got to try and unjam the rudders. And this means slowing almost to a standstill and then sending down divers. I mean, you send down the divers internally in the internal part of the ship.
Yeah.
But before this work is undertaken, Lütjens decides to signal Berlin. Ship unmaneuverable. We fight to the last shell. Long live the Führer. So another bit of cheer from Lütjens. I mean, Jesus, he's a...
Well, imagine being the signaller.
He's not a bundle of fun, is he?
But you're the signaller being handed that. So you set the wheels on the thing and the
take this down.
Yeah, exactly.
So quickly the work's carried out. The leak is fixed very quickly, but it's absolutely clear that no divers are going to get anywhere near the rudder. No way. So several volunteers to go and blow off the rudders in an act of self-sacrifice. They could then steer with the props alone, but the explosion, of course, would damage the props. So this is a terrible idea, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So the only chance is to try and steer with the props. So you would go sort of, half a head port, stop, center, starboard, repeat, etc. But it doesn't work. The bow would keep moving, but then, so the bow would move around, and then the bows would then gradually swing back again into the wind and towards the northwest. And of course, that way leads danger.
Yes.
And then the news arrives that they're surrounded by Royal Navy destroyers. So the hunting dogs from Zambia are closing in on them. So, they now know they're in a really, really sticky situation. So the plan to slow down the Bismarck has worked. And how? I mean, just incredible.
Yeah. Well, she can only steer around in circles and is running out of fuel. And as an admiral who is going to fight to the last shell, so there's no suggestion they're going to surrender or anything either. He's not going, well, you know what? Ship's unsustainable.
Get everyone into lifeboats. I'll sink the ship. We'll scuttle the ship, but not until everyone's got out.
Yeah, he's not going to do that. He will fight to the last shell.
Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that?
Jim, I don't know.
It's because he's a terrible, despicable human being.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. So Tovey orders the KG-5 and Rodney to head straight for the Bismarck. It's a rotten weather again, so they know they're not going to be able to strike her as soon as possible, but that doesn't matter because she can't get away. Vian's destroyers are in contact, and Tovey's trusting him to keep Bismarck in sight.
If anyone can do it, Vian can.
Yeah, exactly. There's the risk of losing Bismarck again, but it's mitigated, isn't it? They know where she's roughly likely to be. And he orders Somerville to take Force 8 20 miles south of the Bismarck to keep out of the way of the main squadron approach. I mean, thanks very much. I'll deal with this.
Yeah,
what Tovey's
you've done your
thinking,
work. I still think it's quite a big decision when you know you've got him quartered. You don't know what his damage is. Yeah. It's still quite a big decision to kind of hold off.
I suppose. But the plan is to attack at dawn with the advantage of the sunrise and the wind. And then Tovey goes to his cabin and writes a message for the entire ship's company, which I think, Jim, you should read.
To KG-5, the sinking of the Bismarck may have an effect on the war as a whole out of all proportion to the loss to the enemy of one battleship. May God be with you and grant you victory. JT 26, 5th, 41. Pretty bullish, isn't it?
It's pretty bullish.
I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, on the rest of the naval forces are closing in and excitement and apprehension is building. They all know they're closing in on the Bismarck. And whether on a battleship, carrier, cruiser, or destroyer, they know that action is going to happen the following morning, that they're probably going to be involved. And George Wally writes on from HMS Tartar, we were closing her rapidly, and the dawn would see the action. What a tale of twists and turns, Al. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it?
It's absolutely incredible. And I think at the core of it, this Royal Navy thing of get your ship alongside the enemies, get him in your sights and smash him, the Nelsonian thing, and then the guts and courage of the lads in the Fleet Air Arm defies belief. It really, really does. Those air crew.
It's absolutely amazing. But just imagine in that late in the evening of 26th of May, I mean, just think what the mood would be like, the tension, the kind of the anticipation of the battle that they know is going to be joined the following morning. I mean, God. Captain Philip Vian, he's one of those sort of yet another Nelsonian type. He's sort of incredibly gung-ho, a very aggressive and rather brilliant and formidable destroyer commander.
Yeah.
And he's got his little destroyer force. He's been escorting a convoy, and he's broken off from that without waiting to be ordered to do so, got into the area, and he's there with his 4 tribals and Prioran, which is a Polish destroyer, and he's ready to pounce. And obviously, 5 destroyers against the mighty Bismarck is an uneven fight. But think of this as like sort of velociraptors, sort of, they're working in a team, or hunting dogs or something. They're kind of sort of homing in around them, sort of biting at the ankles a little bit with their torpedoes. But the seas are still really, really rough, and just navigating with these destroyers is incredibly difficult. But anyway, they've got here. And these are all absolutely 8 graders. I mean, all the commanders of these destroyers are absolutely top drawer. They know what they're about. They've got the salt in their hair and in their face and in their blood. And there's nothing these guys don't know about kind of sort of fighting with destroyers. Yeah. So they're very good, very gung-ho. And with Vian as their commander, they're determined to do whatever damage they can. And really, again, this is about heel snapping. Yeah. Or to put another way, this is the horsemen with their spears before the Torpedo comes in and does the coup de grace.
What it really reminds me of is, if people have been watching the Kingdom, the David Attenborough wildlife thing.
Yes.
They're like the hunting dogs or the hyenas that come in.
They are.
And try and have a go at something bigger that, like a wildebeest, that if it kicks them in the face, it'll kill them. But they're still coming in, they're still having a go, and attritionally, they'll bring them down, wear them out, knock them out. And then obviously what happens in that wildlife documentary is then a lion turns up and they all bugger off and it eats the wildebeest.
Yes, and that's actually basically the same. Lion equals battleship.
Yeah. It's not unlike that. Is it? It's strange. So Vian orders the tribals in with the. I mean, I think it's fascinating that before the main attack, Prioran has a go. That the Polish destroyer, and this tells you something about maybe the Royal Navy might be Nelsonian, but the Poles have got a different issue here.
Let me get at them.
Let me get stuck in, business before pleasure and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, it's like the Hurricane going up to sort of 50 yards away from the Messerschmitt, isn't it?
Exactly. Or the 6-pounder crew in Arnhem, the Poles that would run round the corner with their 6-pounder and fire one off and then run away again. It's just like that they want to be in first. And they exchange gunfire.
And Prioran has this incredible little engagement.
Yeah. I mean, what a thing to do.
Yeah, it sort of goes in, sort of, fires its guns, does a loop, comes back again, and also of course, destroyers are pretty agile, so they can maneuver quicker than capital ships, but even so.
Yeah, I mean that's gutsy, isn't it? And one of Bismarck's return salvos lands within 20 yards. So the captain of Prioran just thinks, okay, we'll make smoke, we'll get out of here, and then gets lost themselves, loses contact with the tribals, which is a mark of how bad the weather is. In an encounter that close, they can lose contact with each other quite easily. And then 11:24, Vian orders a synchronized torpedo attack, which is in this weather not so easy, and with Bismarck shelling them, not so easy either. I mean, this is all very. I
mean, I really can't stress enough that this is a big swell. Yeah. So this is big rolling waves, and these destroyers are comparatively small. They're a sort of 100 yards long, 100 meters long, something like that. They're not a huge, great thing, and they're tossed about all over the place. On the seas. I mean, really, really are. So trying to fire off a half decent shot is incredibly difficult.
Well, and against a moving target, and with the sea, the torpedoes are temperamental things anyway. Once they're underway, and the conditions won't exactly help, because the Swordfish, they have to make sure when they're delivering a torpedo, they have to make sure they deliver it into the right part of the wave in order for it not to be disrupted by the swell. So there's the same issues here, really. I mean, just think of being these crews, though. This is a world famous, world's biggest battleship encounter. There you are on a plucky little, I don't know, Mary or whatever. These are gutsy people, aren't they?
Really, really gutsy people. I mean, obviously, Vian's absolutely loving it. I mean, he's very much in that kind of sort of George Jellicoe kind of Paddy Mayne type,
Yeah.
he just sort of, it's all scouts with guns kind of attitude.
Yeah.
He'd be a kind of one of those sort of, he'd be parachuting off mountains and stuff and skiing and things and, doing really crazy stuff.
Yeah, walking to the South Pole in slippers. He's one of those people, isn't he? Basically.
So for him, this is just an absolute blast. But I'm not sure for all his officers, they're feeling quite such enthusiasm for it. But his intention is to launch a synchronized torpedo attack. And the idea about it being synchronized is that you go off at all the various, you've got 4 of them. So you come off different beams, different sides, and you attack them all at once. And that means that Bismarck can't swerve to avoid them all.
Yeah.
I mean, as it happens, the chances of one of these torpedoes doing serious damage is quite small, but it might cause enough damage to do a bit of localized flooding, which then slows it down, which makes its life a little bit harder. So they're not anticipating they're going to sink Bismarck with a torpedo because of its waist armor and all the rest of it. But they are hoping they're going to just sort of, as you say, snap at the ankles and wear it down a little bit.
Hold Lütjens up as well is the other thing. Preoccupy him so that when the big ships arrive.
Because they don't know what the problem is. They might solve the problem on the Bismarck and then it could be off again. Yeah. So Vian's job is to peck at it, but also make sure he doesn't lose sight of it.
Yeah.
Keep it in his field. The problem is the weather is so bad, it is just impossible to do a synchronized attack. They just can't physically do it because they're being tossed about all over the place. So they just basically take it in turns to go in and attack whichever way they can. And Bismarck's firing is also pretty good. It's pretty sophisticated, and the key thing is not to get themselves sunk.
Yeah.
But anyway, so HMS Murray goes in first, which actually was eventually sunk off Valletta in Malta, and the wreck is still there.
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
That goes in at 1:21 a.m. and fires all its 4 torpedoes, but records no hits. And then Zulu fires 2 torpedoes at 1:37 a.m. at 2 miles out. And Commander Graham is hoping to cross her bows and attack with 2 more. But the fire from Bismarck is too hot.
Yeah.
And then Vian launches his own attack in HMS Cossack at 1:40 a.m. He does this by stealing up on Bismarck's disengaged side and reports hits. And then finally it's Sieg's turn, which closes in and reports a further possible hit. In fact, as it turns out, none of them have hit.
Right.
But Bismarck is burning up ammo. And what else is it doing? Burning up waking hours.
Yeah.
This attack keeps that crew awake all night. And particularly the gunners.
And at battle stations. So absolutely at full tilt.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about this, just remind yourself of how you feel when you've had 1 hour's sleep the previous night or 2 hours sleep or whatever. You feel absolutely shocking, don't you?
Yeah.
Head hurting.
Yeah.
Stingy eyes.
Yeah.
Can't concentrate properly. Can't think properly. And when dawn arrives, you're probably going to have to face.
When dawn comes, you better see them coming, because this we mustn't forget this is a nighttime encounter. This is happening in pitch black, isn't it? In pitch black night in these difficult seas. And I suppose, as you say, you're burning up the Germans' nerves in this process, aren't you? You're burning their nerve up, burning up Lütjens' ability to think clearly, because maybe the thing to do actually is, come daybreak, run up a white flag and go, you know what? We're done.
Yeah, and the damage is something you can't calculate really, because this is men's emotions, it's men's fatigue and fatigue levels and all the rest of it. But actually, there's a reason why they think they've scored a hit, because the Bismarck stops in the water.
God,
and this is because it's still desperately trying to fix this bloody rudder that's got jammed at 15 degrees or whatever it is.
Yeah, God, there's an opportunity.
And eventually it gets underway again at 2:30 a.m. Admiral Tovey then orders Vian to illuminate the battleship with star shells every half hour, which it does. And again, this is to grind on its nerves of the German crew. Cossack, for example, which is Vian's ship, fires its last torpedo at 3:30 a.m., but again doesn't see any hit at all. And by 4 a.m., the destroyers actually have briefly lost touch with the Bismarck, although they regain it again at 5:50 a.m. when Mary sights her slowly zigzagging northwest. So she's not going in a big circle. So the thing is, with the rudder jammed, you can move forward.
Yeah.
But the problem, and you can start to turn, but then part of the rest of it swings round in the wind. So you have no control. So actually, it's generally steering on a northerly course. What it can't do is about turn 180 degrees.
They can't steer. That's it. That they can't steer. They ain't going nowhere.
No, exactly. But they're not going around in a big circle. That's the point.
No, but what they aren't able to do as well is lose these destroyers. They can't because they've had enough boiler damage. They can't open the throttles and get away. Is the other thing. So. It's, so Mary spots her, as you say, and then sees her coming out of a rain squall at 6:30 in the morning. And it's daylight. And at 7:00, Mary fires her last torpedoes, but without success. So this is amazing. Then they basically take station around the ship, basically picketing the Bismarck. And like we say, like hunting dogs.
Varn has done an amazing job.
Yeah, he has.
Him and his crews. Okay, they haven't got those hits, but that's not the point. That is to completely miss the point, because even if they did hit it, as I say, the chances of them causing serious damage is quite small. This is about harrying them, keeping the crew awake, keeping those star shells up, just being there, preying on their nerves. We're here. We haven't lost sight of you. And while we're here, we're bringing other people towards us.
And staying in contact, because after all, there's been a fraught period where they'd lost her.
In these incredibly difficult conditions.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, this is, in a way, that Varn and his destroyers, it's the overture to what is now to be this grand opera of destruction that's to follow, really. And the Royal Navy now starts to assemble. Rodney's fallen out of action stations. The assumption aboard Rodney was that the Swordfish attack has failed. But now, general quarters is sounded. Mm-hmm. The men who'd gone back to bed and back to their hammocks and their bunks, they had to get up, duffel coats on, boots on, men running to action stations. And the captain comes on the loudspeaker, and then imagine this moment. Imagine this moment, hearing this over the tannoy, that the Bismarck was damaged, and that together with the KG-5, they would engage at dawn. It's just the sheer drama of all this.
And you can see it. It's told in just a completely deadpan way.
Yeah. Oh, yes, exactly.
This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. Bismarck sighted. Bismarck damaged. Engage at dawn.
Very well.
The thing is, though, a similar announcement went out on Hood, and look what happened to Hood. So, I mean, we can't get. You can't get too excited, can you? It's the other thing.
Well, no. I mean, if you're a British crew, you're still going to be absolutely cacking yourself.
Yeah, of course you are. Yeah,
let's face it.
Yeah, exactly. And then I love this. The chaplain comes on. Almighty God, most merciful Father, we make our address to thy divine majesty, that thou wouldst take the cause of thine own hand and judge between us and our enemies. Stirring stuff.
Yeah.
The thing is, so much of this, when you think about ships' crews and how well they all know each other, the intimacy they all live in, and the way they all live together, and the fact that, it's not like being in a brigade depot where people come and go. You all live in each other's pocket. You know who the keen people are, who the skivers are. But once in this situation, you've all got to work towards a common purpose, haven't you? There can be no malingering in this, and certainly you can't betray your emotions either.
I don't think there is much malingering. Do you?
No, but you know what I mean. In any body of men, there'll be someone who.
I know exactly what you mean, but the peer pressure to kind of when it's hitting the fan to actually...
That's sort of my point. How different a ship's crew is to, say, an infantry battalion, because people come and go, don't they, in the army or in a tank regiment. People come and go, they're sent away. Whereas these guys have been at sea, they all know each other inside out, and they're all now going to battle together. And they also know that a strike like the one on the Hood might kill all of them.
I can't even begin to think what it must be like. And there you are in the middle of the Atlantic. You can't see, you can see other ships, but you can't see anything but the sea. If anything goes wrong, your wiggle room is pretty small.
Yeah.
Chance of being picked up is comparatively small. It's not great odds.
No.
Absolutely terrifying. Anyway,
yeah.
The Royal Navy is now massing. You
Yeah.
know, all these plans that have been put into place of these converging on the Bismarck. This is the moment. And to the north, Adam Wake Walker, who is, do you remember, he's the cruiser commander, the cruiser squadron commander of the Norfolk and Suffolk. And he's on the Norfolk and he's trying to catch up. Captain Phillips, who's the captain of the Norfolk, had earlier reduced speed to save fuel, but now turns over to full speed after news of the Swordfish attack and its success has reached them. And to the south, the cruiser Dorsetshire, which is going to play a big part, is now fast approaching at a whopping 28 knots. And the other cruiser, Edinburgh, had turned for home, but then reverses course after it hears the news of the Bismarck. So, we need fuel, but what the heck? I'm not going to miss out on this one. So fuel reserves are very, very low. So when the action is then postponed to the morning, Commodore Blackmore once more turns towards Londonderry. So HMS Edinburgh is out of the fray.
Oh.
Is out of the fray. I bet it's cursing. Right?
Yeah.
But meanwhile, Admiral Somerville, who is the Force H commander, which has come from Gibraltar with the Ark Royal and Repulse and so on, is keen to send off his Swordfish again. And then you've got the Tribals, plus the Tartar and Mashoma, who are with the HMS Rodney, the battleship HMS Rodney, with its 16-inch guns. Meanwhile, on the Bismarck, I mean, what are they feeling, do you think?
Well,
I mean, they know about the rudder,
yeah,
but most the previous evening had the faith that it would be resolved. So certainly in the first part of the evening of the 26th of May, there's no great despair.
Yeah.
And then they get busy with Vian's attack, which goes on through the night, and the crew are busy as a result. But at 1:45 a.m., a signal is passed from Admiral Raeder back in Berlin.
Yeah.
And he says, please inform the crew that early in the morning, 81 Junkers 887 aircraft will join us in addition to 2 tugs and 1 tanker. The U-boats have received orders to close with Bismarck. But as it turns out, none of these are ever going to appear. This is like, the 1,000 fighter planes which are going to support Operation Lütjens in Normandy in August 1944. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense.
I mean, this is a recurrent, this is a Luftwaffe motif of the leitmotif of the war, isn't it? It's don't worry, we're going to send every single plane we possibly can, and then they don't, and then they simply don't show up. This signals exactly when the destroyers start firing off their torpedoes, isn't it? That's interesting that it's coincident with that.
Exactly. How do you think Admiral Lütjens aboard the Bismarck replies to this?
Oh dear.
So he signals back to Hitler, and he says,
To the Führer of the German Reich, Adolf Hitler, we fight to the last in our belief of you, mein Führer, and in the firm faith of Germany's victory. I mean,
But remember, Lütjens is not a Nazi.
He's not a Nazi.
He has an Imperial German dagger.
That's right.
He doesn't have a Nazi dagger. He has an Imperial Navy dagger.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, how many of these messages does Hitler send into the war during the war to people he knows are going to die shortly? I mean, it's a classic.
It's awful. It's absolutely dreadful.
It's absolute classic of the genre. This.
So he's still awake because it's only 2 a.m. Well, of course he is, because he's always up all night and he sleeps until 10.
Yeah.
But his Captain Bülow, who's his one of his aides, and there's Engels, who's his other adjutant. They both record in their diaries that Hitler is really, really agitated and depressed by this.
Right. Okay.
Well, he might be.
Yeah. Well, and he says, "I thank you in the name of the German people. The whole of Germany is with you. What can still be done will be done. The performance of your duty will strengthen our people in the struggle for their existence." So, in other words, he's saying, you die nicely, please, and everyone will think that's fantastic.
Yes.
Rather than, I have a war to fight here.
And then there's another message from Raeder. So Raeder's sort of like, you're just about to go into your first A level. Our thoughts are with you and your ship. We wish you success for your hard fight. I mean, it's not exactly... It's not inspiring, is it?
No, he's not really helping, is he?
And at this point, Lütjens is completely resigned. Lütjens is totally resigned that on the morning, it will be tot for all of them.
Well, I mean,
that's it.
He might as well be singing "Que sera, sera," right? I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? He's and he then, as he prepares to die, basically, he busies himself with important sort of admin. So he signals Raeder saying that Commodore Schneider should get a Knight's Cross for sinking the Hood.
Yes, he's the gunnery commander.
Exactly. Sure, cheer Schneider up as he sort of prepares his crews for this encounter. And Hitler approves it immediately because he's still up. Because Hitler, he's
it's like a sort of WhatsApp message sequence, isn't it? This, the speed with which they're sending these signals.
Yeah.
Ah, the Führer's replied. But by this time, it's the early hours of the morning.
Yeah.
The crew's been seeing off this destroyer attack. Everyone realises that, and don't forget, it's sort of 2:30 or whatever it is, they're dead in the water.
Yeah.
So that does very little to improve morale.
Yeah.
And that earlier faith that it's all going to be fine is starting to kind of seep away down the drain.
Yeah.
2 hours later, so what's this, a sort of, 4 a.m., the award is announced over the loudspeakers. And this is obviously designed to boost morale, but also underlines the seriousness of the situation, because the bottom line is you don't do spontaneous Knights Crosses when everything's going well. It's a bit like your VC theory.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exactly the same thing, isn't it? Yeah. And then from Gruppe West comes the news that all U-boats are steering towards Bismarck, and 3 tugs are on their way, and the Ermland, which is an oiler, is sailing towards her with fuel, and 81 aircraft will be heading that way that morning. But this is sort of reinforcing the earlier message from Raeder, but it's not coming, and it's not there now. That's the bottom line.
81 is a peculiarly specific number as well, isn't it? There's something about that really does feel like it's been pulled out of someone's arse, doesn't it? 81. Oh, right, okay. Oh, that's all right then. I mean,
not 82, not 80, not even 90, just 81.
And it's the point you made. You make about pilots whose planes go down and the pilot gets the VC and everyone else is killed on the plane, right? And they don't get them. Why not just give the Knights Cross to everyone on the Bismarck, right? to cheer them all up, right? Because the idea is are the others meant to go, well done you.
Oh no,
well done you. Aren't you? Oh, didn't you do well?
Well, I think they do in that kind of sort of weird sort of German thing in the war that kind of, I don't know. I mean, it's so alien to me that I can't quite
exactly.
get my head around it. But.
An honour for one is an honour for all, or something. It's that.
But it's also broadcast that 7 Swordfish have been shot down and 1 destroyer sunk and 2 more left burning. But again, this is sort of, this is like claims in the Battle of Britain. It's all pie in the sky stuff. It's just none of it true at all. And it's absolutely clear that as the night is wearing on, so nerves are really beginning to start to fray because the crew's all exhausted. In one engine room, a man goes absolutely berserk and has to be sedated. In another, Werner Lust found a number of the artificers in low spirits. And on deck, the flak crews gather around Chief Petty Officer Wienand. And Wienand is popular. He's a bit older. He's from Hamburg and married. And he shows them photos of his wife pulled from his wallet. Isn't she pretty? He tells them. If I don't survive, I want one of you to go and see her and tell her my last thoughts of her. And the others all sort of go, oh, no, it's not that bad, and helps on its way. And Wienand says, yes, I know all that, but I really don't believe it anymore. It all sounds too good to be true. And it is.
Yeah.
It's the truth of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the third gunnery officer.
Yes, well, we've mentioned this chap before. Kapitän Leutnant Freiherr Burkhard Muhlenheim-Reckberg. And he's in the after control tower. And he told fellow officers that he feels like meat on the slab waiting for the butcher's chopper.
Oh, blimey.
So you can see this sort of spreading through the ship, osmosis-like, that this is every passing hour and they're still kind of not on the right course and the rudder hasn't been sorted and there's no sign of Stukas and there's no sign of U-boats. The clock is ticking inexorably and they are like the meat on the slab waiting for the butcher's chopper.
No two ways about it, yeah. And then Lütjens orders the ship's Arado aircraft, because it has a plane, of course, for gunnery spotting, really, to fly off with the ship's log and film footage, with the footage of sinking the Hood, and accounts by the war correspondent who's come along. The orders are piped out at 5 a.m. The pilot and the navigator, they get into the cockpit, start the engine, but the catapult gear fails.
I mean, you can imagine him, can't you? He's just going, yes, I've got away with it. I've got away.
Are you sure, sir?
Duty.
But he'd have had to do that whole thing.
You really want me to fly off?
Only if it's entirely necessary, sir.
Absolutely necessary. I would much rather stay with the dying ship. But then the catapult gear fails. Can't launch it, so he's just going, no.
Oh God!
And he has to clamber out again.
And they're all clapping him on the back. Just think of the gags, the joke, the banter surrounding that event. Oh well, you said you didn't want to go.
Oh, it must have been hilarious.
This is quite interesting, actually. Is that Raeder, in the meantime, sort of gets real and orders a call to be put through to the German naval attaché in Madrid to ask the Spanish to send a hospital ship or any spare vessel to assist the Bismarck. Raeder knows that they're meat on the slab waiting for the butcher's chopper. He's no fool. He can see.
Yeah, he really does.
He really, really does. He's called the ambulance already. Even before the fight has started, he's called an ambulance. It's awful.
Well, exactly. And also, there's that weather, which is no good for, mounting torpedo attacks, but it's also no good for 81 Stukas.
No, I mean, whatever they were gonna do. Yeah. And then, just how unrealistic some of this is. Lütjens then asks for a U-boat to take off the ship's log. I mean, he's surrounded by destroyers, and he thinks a U-boat's going to just like steam in and pop up and
saunter
in. And also, we talked in our first Atlantic War episodes about how slow U-boats are. You can't whistle them up, can you? You know, if they're on the surface, they can make fairly good headway. But if they're trying to conceal themselves, they really aren't going to arrive in a great rush, are they?
No, sir. In the middle of a torpedo attack. I mean, really.
Yeah, it's just
no, and it's also absolutely clear that Captain Z. Lindemann, who is after all the captain of the Bismarck, is getting really, really fed up with Lütjens. I mean, this guy's really, really getting on his nerves.
Yeah.
So he then says, Lütjens says, well, obviously, to get a U-boat up, it's going to mean stopping the engines. This is quite risky because the engines could then seize up. The chief engineer officer calls up to ask permission to stop, and Lindemann just goes, "I'll do whatever you like. I'm finished with them." I've had it.
Oh dear.
Had it up to here.
And nerves are going.
And then it's his orders to the crew to take whatever they want. Just take it. We're not going to need it. Can't take it with us.
Which is supposed to like cheer them up, but obviously you can't put a foot right in this situation. Surely there are no magic words you can say.
No.
And at 8:00 that morning, an enemy cruiser's reported on the port bow. It's the Norfolk who's finally caught up. Then a rain squall comes and hides her, and when it's past, German officers on the bridge, they peer through their binos once again, and they see 2 battleships ahead.
It is the King George V and the Rodney, and they have arrived, people.
The Rodney and the KGV, the King George V, have arrived upon the scene.
Yes, and we haven't really talked much about what Tovey's up to, have we? So shall we explain what he's been doing all night?
Go ahead, fill him in. Yeah.
So 1 a.m. on the 27th, Tovey's battle fleet has gone as far to the northeast of Bismarck as he wanted.
Yeah.
And then he turns and runs down the reciprocal bearing. So to be west of,
yes,
like that kind of thing. West of Bismarck at dawn. And at 5 a.m. on Monday the 27th of May, they crossed 20 miles ahead of Bismarck. But the weather's so bad, they never even see Vian's star shells, which he's sending out every half hour.
Wow.
And Lieutenant Hugh Guernsey is an officer on the KG5. And he notes that throughout the night we sat, stood, or leant like a covey of disembodied spirits. It was dark, windy, and rainy. None of us will ever know it was cold. About 2:00 in the morning, cocoa appeared. We drank it gratefully, but it might equally have been pitch tar. No one would have noticed. So they're also frazzled.
Yeah.
And a bit numb at the prospect of what's to come. And there's this sort of, I think there's a sort of collective sense of unreality, isn't there? Sort of sweeping through both sides, I think. Anyway, dawn breaks at last, and Hugh Guernsey continues. He goes, patchy rain squalls, a tearing wind from the northwest, and a rising sea. I mean, it's hardly ideal conditions, is it?
No. And Somerville, as we mentioned in the first part, was planning on sending another swordfish strike, but decides against it. He nixes it because the weather's so bad. There's poor visibility, extremely high wind, and anyway, the heavy metal has arrived. You can park the string bags now because,
yes,
again, they can harry, they can bother, they can disrupt, and in fact have done exactly that. And the Bismarck's in the predicament she's in because of the swordfish attack. But what they can't do is sink her. And this is what you need literally the big guns for. And Tovey says, yeah, great, that's absolutely right. The warships are here, so you can stand the fleet air arm down. Much as I'd love to tell another tale of plucky string bags going in through all that flak and,
Al, they've done their work. They've done their work, and they've done it magnificently.
They have done it, absolutely. There's no argument.
Hand over to the big boys now. But first of all, there's a bit of praying to be done.
So Tovey goes to his cabin to pray, just as Nelson had done before Trafalgar.
There he is.
I know, right there. Use the fleet. He's worried about what losses.
Engage the enemy more closely.
And he knows he's worried about what losses they might suffer, because the Bismarck, even if she's lame, is still like has excellent gunnery and extreme potential to cause extreme damage. And sank the Hood only 5 minutes ago. And he feels the longer he prays, the easier he feels, and he knows all would be well. God is on his side. Nelson is at his right hand or on his shoulder. Everything's going to be fine. And he has been planning tactics all night. Now he shares them with his senior officers.
And the plan is this.
Well, interesting, isn't it? I mean, the distances are fascinating, Jim, when we get into it. So go on.
Well, the King George V and the Rodney are going to approach the enemy head on, in line abreast, 3/5 of a mile apart.
Yeah.
And he hopes this would put the fear into Bismarck's crew, just seeing them kind of going straight towards them. The two battleships would then close as quickly as possible to 7 to 8 miles and then turn and fire their broadsides. So Rodney would then have the discretion to manoeuvre on its own. And at 7:30 a.m. on the 27th of May, Tovey orders the fleet to turn to port in a long, slow arc to the east towards Bismarck, keeping abreast of her position from Huff-Duff bearings from Murray, and this is high-frequency direction finding, which is sort of radio signals from HMS Murray. And at 8:30 a.m., Norfolk appears dead ahead, reaches the scene at the last moment, and originally thought that Bismarck was Rodney. So when Bismarck opened fire, Norfolk swiftly got out of the way, and seeing Rodney and KG-5 signaled to Tovey, "Enemy bears 130 degrees, 16 miles. On tin hats!" Completely brilliant. That's another line I think we should put on a t-shirt.
On tin hats. Yes, absolutely. I love it. And so Tovey does put his tin hat on.
Quite right too. Takes
the advice. And the ships start to sort of manoeuvre. So the minutes are ticking by, the seconds are straining their way through, and lookouts are looking, because again, the weather, this is the thing, is the weather is diabolical. And then suddenly there she is.
Woo!
Suddenly through the mist and the filth and the cloud, there she is. Hugh Guernsey, what does he say, Jim?
Well, you remember he's on the King George V. He goes, "We spotted her veiled in distant rainfall, a thick, squat ghost of a ship, very broad in the beam, coming straight towards us. And what comes on over the loudspeakers?
Enemy in sight!
Enemy in sight." And what do the men do on Rodney?
They cheer, Jim.
Huzzah! They cheer because this is release of tension. Yeah. The moment is upon them. There's a sort of collective sense of excitement, apprehension, nerves, of course, all those things together, and it erupts in a rebel yell kind of cheer.
Well, a war cry, if anything.
Well, a war cry. It's what it is. So I was watching a thing the other day of a veteran of the First World War, and he was talking about, and they were saying, when you were going over the top, did you all shout and cheer? And he said, yeah, we did. We all shouted and cheered. He said it was something you just couldn't help yourself. You were charging towards the enemy, and everyone was just going rah, like that.
Wow,
it's really interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And this is at 8:43 on Monday, the 27th of May, 1941. So a year on.
And we've now got to the moment.
Yeah. A year on from Dunkirk. That we've got to place it in the continuity of the war. This is the thing, isn't it?
Monday, the 27th of May, the day that Britain comes closest to losing the war, arguably.
Yeah.
And here we are, 1941. And actually, we're coming to the moment where Britain is turning a massive corner and heading towards winning the war at this very precise moment.
Yeah.
It is a moment of enormous magnitude, because the naval war is the single most important part of the Second World War.
Yeah.
Because without it, you don't have D-Day, you don't have Normandy, you don't have Sicily, you don't have Operation Torch, you don't have any invasions, you don't have any amphibious operations, you don't have Britain surviving. So
Yep.
this is why those sea lanes and keeping these sea lanes secure is so absolutely vital. And back in March, you've had the death of or capture of those 3 leading aces, Shepke, Kretschmer, and Preen.
Yep.
And now you've got the Bismarck, the mightiest battleship in the world, surrounded, snared, wounded, lame, and about to be fired upon. As I say, it's 8:43 a.m. on Monday, the 27th of May, 1941. And Rodney is the first to open fire.
But to go to your point there, Jim, say you're a modern government and you want to have a global security strategy, you need to have a powerful navy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just leaving that lying there. That's enough geopolitics. Let's get. The guns are about to fire. So on Rodney, she opens fire. She's first to fire at 8:47.
Yes.
George Wally, who's on Tartars on the upper deck when he sees streaks of fire and then brown smoke, followed by a rumble of the opening salvo. And he runs to the wardroom where some of the other officers are catching up on their steam. Says, "They found her. It's begun."
And you know who else is on HMS Tartar, don't you?
It's Ludovic Kennedy, isn't it?
Ludovic Kennedy.
Yes, whose account, we've put up a chapter from his book Pursuit. It's the most amazing book, absolutely incredible, like extraordinary, exciting prose. That we put that up on our Patreon for patrons to listen to. And I may read some more chapters because it was really, really, it's really vivid and well worth a listen.
Well, yes, and we should maybe we should try and persuade Bill to republish it.
That's a good idea.
Anyway, so the fire gong has also sounded on the KG-5, which is this curious thing that just before you literally have a gong, and it warns everyone that the earthquake is about to happen. So Captain Patterson, who's the commander of the King George V, Tovey is the admiral,
yeah.
Patterson is the captain, and so this is a bit like Lütjens and Lindemann. And his officers are all on the bridge with tin hats on and cotton wool in their ears. And then the King George V's guns open up at 8:48, so a minute later, about a minute and a half actually, after the Rodney. And it's like a small earthquake. And Lieutenant Hugh Guernsey is on the bridge at the time, and the blast blows his tin hat off his head, and a pile of signals are sucked upwards and then scattered to the four winds. And salvos are falling as Bismarck is turning to starboard to bring all her guns to bear. And great white plumes of water burst all around her. And the Bismarck fires back at 8:50 a.m., so 3 minutes after the first round. And the British crews then see the ripple of orange fire down her length, followed by the pall of cordite smoke. It's much blacker and thicker than British smoke, so they can always tell a German one from a British. And one of Tovey's staff officers begins calling out the seconds. And Tovey says, "For heaven's sake, shut up!" It's just brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I like Tovey more and more, I have to say.
Yeah.
The salvo is aimed at Rodney rather than the King George V, and it's a little bit short, so there's a sigh of relief on the KG-5. The Norfolk is now at 10 miles range and opens fire of its 8-inch guns. And Rodney and the King George V now firing multiple salvos. So this is just absolutely, it is raining shells.
Yeah.
And they're claiming straddles and hits. And this is the key thing. You want to straddle your enemy, because when you've straddled your enemy, you know you're nearly there.
Yeah.
And when you're straddling, you only need one lucky shot to kind of hit the mark, and it's good night, Charlie. CF HMS Hood.
Yeah.
But Bismarck is also finding its own range, and the third salvo straddles Rodney. Splinters strike her. One passes through the starboard side of the anti-aircraft director, smashes the ceasefire bell, passes through a tin hat on a hook, severs the trainer's telescope, hits the fire gong, and grazes the trainer's wrist.
Incredible.
So he's had a very, very lucky escape. You have luck and you have bad luck.
Yeah.
And so Captain Dalrymple Hamilton turns to port to avoid the next salvo and brings the after turret into action. And Hugh Guernsey again. Do you want to read this one?
Yes. I watched Rodney to see if she was being hit, but she just sat there like a great slab of rock blocking the northern horizon, and then suddenly belched a full salvo. And he watches the shells streak over like little diminishing footballs curving into the sky.
Oh, it's lovely, beautifully vivid, that is.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And they're closing on Bismarck now. So all the window of vulnerability moments have passed.
But just to interrupt,
yeah, sure.
just think about this. You're this huge warship surging through the wave, surging through this still pretty chunky swell, although it's lessening a bit. Fumes of water either side, the bellow of these guns, the whole ship rocking. I mean, you can picture it, can't you? This sort of incredible sort of force of kinetic energy hurtling towards the Bismarck, which is, still moving, of course.
Yeah. And Tovey orders the Rodney and the KG-5 to turn from southeast to south to bring all their guns to bear so they can fire broadsides. And their hits, they are now striking the Bismarck. One strike hits the forecastle, while another sends up a sheet of flame up the superstructure. And a fourth British ship now appears, the Dorsetshire. She's been steaming 600 miles at between 20 to 32 knots in these hard seas. Sees Cossack, bumps into Cossack basically 40 minutes earlier, and is directed by Vine to the scene. Vine's like, they're over there. Good Godspeed, good luck.
Yes.
Go get her.
And good shooting.
Yeah, good shooting and all that. But on the Bismarck, obviously they're not. Even though we went through a sort of litany of doomed fatalism upon the Bismarck and wrong steps, they're going to go down swinging. So Bismarck turns its attention to KGV to the KG-5. I need to get that right. It's the KG-5, isn't it? We'll get letters.
KG-5, not KGV.
Yeah. And Hugh Guernsey hears the whine of approaching shells, followed by enormous fountains of water. And he finds himself wanting to go behind a doorway at the back of the bridge. It's quite funny, isn't it? I think I'll just shuffle back to that door there, maybe.
I just want to be really small.
Yeah. And he realises, actually, that won't offer me any protection. If we're hit, we're hit, we're hit. And he finds the courage to step forward again and take his place. And then 15 minutes after the first shots are fired, Dalrymple Hamilton realises that Bismarck will soon be drawing past him. So if he's not careful, the Rodney will end up coming between Bismarck and KG-5. So he did what no British warship has done since the Battle of Cape St Vincent. I just love the way they got... That's how he'll have been thinking of it. He'll have been thinking of his history, won't he?
Yeah.
And he takes his ship out of the line, which it hasn't been done since the Battle of Cape.
Well, not while you're in the middle of engagement, no.
Exactly. And he must be thinking, but I hope this works, because otherwise I'm either bollocking and the sort of what they're going to say about me.
And let's face it, he's not going to be out of the line for long. He's just This is really just manoeuvring into a better position, or advantageous position. But anyway, I think the key thing is that those on these ships have little time to take in what's happening. It's all happening so quickly. You're completely focused on what's around you. Too busy firing, being fired upon, as well, of course, as dodging shells. So up on the bridge, you have those who are kind of sending out orders to manoeuvre. They're having to manoeuvre like crazy.
Yeah.
But the tribals have a spectator's view because they're doing their hunting dogs bit and just staying on the kind of on the corner. And it's not just Vian's for. It's also Tartar and Mashona. So this is Ludovic Kennedy and George Wally. So George Wally is on Tartar, and he goes, it's impossible to imagine the sense of detachment watching a battle between capital ships as one watches a tennis match or a film. So they really do feel like spectators in this. And he's struck by the vividness of sudden colour, the first patches of blue sky in days and clouds streaking across it, and the blackness of Bismarck and the grey of the British and the green-blue of the ocean and the white tops of the waves, as well as the brown pall of smoke from the British guns and the darker smoke from the Germans. And then there's the ripple of orange with each broadside. Again, this piece that he writes about his experience in this battle is incredibly vivid. But of course, Wally's also thinking about the men on the Bismarck, and that's why we included that quote from him at the beginning of this episode. And initially, Bismarck's gunnery's been pretty good, and she's, as we mentioned, she quickly straddled Rodney. But this is quickly over. Rodney's surging forwards. Bismarck's aim goes off completely. The moment these straddles start to occur, only minor adjustments are then needed to hit. And George Wally on Tartar and others watching the shells now see them tearing into the Bismarck and smashing her superstructure. And Wally writes, a dull red glow showed from an instant where a shell had hit. Soon Bismarck could no longer manage controlled firing, and judging from the spasmodic shooting, went into local control. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. He's right, isn't he? Because one shell's gone through the bridge.
He's spot on.
Yeah, and must have killed everybody, including Lütjens and Lindemann. Lütjens waiting for the fatal moment can end now. And that's probably from Dorsetshire, an 8-inch shell, which they're doing very well with the 8-inch shells. And another goes into the gunnery control tower, which kills the recently decorated Commandeur Aldebert Schneider, whose Knight's Cross is not yet in the post. He's the gunnery control officer, commander. With him, all command and control has gone. Bismarck's ability to fire back effectively is now, as Wally's noticed, it's gone into local control. Rechberg points out 2 hits on the bridge in the main control position blew out Bismarck's brains.
And that's the point. Your guns might still be functioning.
Yeah.
But if you've got no control,
whatever.
You're stuffed.
Yes.
And actually, Mullenheim Rechberg had noticed that it had taken a little while for the British to find range, but once they did hit Bismarck, they were doing so repeatedly, and especially on the front half. And he's aware that A and B turrets have been knocked out quite quickly, and also the gunnery control tower. And once control's gone, Mullenheim Rechberg then hurries forward to the B turret and takes command there, and he fires 4 salvos, and a shell explodes near him. And he bangs his head against an instrument and also smashes the optics of the rangefinder. Yeah. So they're then losing accuracy as a result. It makes it much harder to fire. And he also realizes that the gun crews are thoroughly demoralized, and then they mutiny. They say, we're not going to stay here for target practice. I mean, you can blame them. And Mullenheim Rechberg also then leaves B turret. And there's reports of prisoners later that one officer shot a gunner for cowardice, but God. Who knows? But anyway, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
You just see the whole thing sort of imploding. All that control, all that training.
Yeah.
Once the brains have been blown out, so to speak. What else is there?
What's left? Yeah. And then the D turret's knocked out. Dora. There's a shell burst in the barrel, causing a flashback, and all that's left is C turret, and then one of its barrels is hit, and that's that. She ceases firing her main guns, the Bismarck. I mean, and this is the moment to. All right, enough. We surrender, surely.
Yep. Why aren't they just surrendering?
I don't know.
I suppose because there's no one to surrender, is there?
And there might be enough. If one officer declares to surrender, there might be enough sort of motivated people who say no, we go down fighting, and they end up. You know what I mean? Who's got the authority to do it?
Yeah.
And after the bridge, someone does take over. The executive officer, Fregattenkapitein Hans Oels, and his command post is down below the armoured deck amidships. So I mean, what can he do?
No, there's nothing. It's mayhem. It's death rows time.
Run up a white flag, send out a signal, please stop. And the Rodney is now closing in with the KG-5, and Dorsetshire is also pounding Bismarck. She's only 4 miles away with her guns, and it's getting easier and easier to fire.
Well, that's effectively point blank range, isn't it?
Yeah, basically with these guns. Yeah,
for battleships.
Yeah. Even though the shells aren't going through the belt armor, they're having a problem penetrating the belt armor, because that's the trade-off. The closer you get, the more likely you are to be striking the belt armor rather than superstructure. And one shell from Bismarck does land close enough to the Rodney to cause some more damage, just off the starboard bow, jamming the sluice door of the starboard torpedo tube. But that's it. After Bismarck's lucky shooting against the hood, that is the closest Bismarck comes to scoring a direct hit in this encounter. I almost feel like it's so depressing, this phase of this battle. When we talked about the Battle of Bulge and the sheer pointlessness of it, and the why bother, it feels like this. I almost, and we're going to go on, but I almost don't want to go on, because it's like, right, it's over, it's done, she's going to sink. But there's more to come, isn't there, Jim?
Yeah, there is. Bismarck's obviously in massive trouble by this stage.
Yeah.
The high hydraulic power serving the Anton turret is jammed with guns depressed, drooping like dead flowers, and obviously can't fire. B turret is also hit, and back of the turret has been blown away, and barrel had burst, leaving a stub like a peeled banana. Inside, though, it's horrific.
Yeah.
Catastrophic fires developing throughout the whole ship. High explosive shells now penetrating when exploding. So they don't just. It's not just the explosive blast, but also the spalling that causes a problem. So you hit a bit of metal, goes through, and shards of hot metal from the superstructure or structure of the ship flying absolutely everywhere. And it's a bit like a shell penetrating the turret of a tank or something.
Tank, yeah.
George Wally writes, "Pray God I may never know what those shells did as they exploded inside the hull, but it, it is it's an apocalypse going on inside the ship." And Dalrymple Hamilton is now zigzagging the Rodney across Bismarck's bows and firing alternately from port and starboard. Having close to 4 miles, and then goes to 3 miles, which is, as we were saying, almost point blank range. And at 9:30 a.m., the Bismarck stops firing. So, when that's 40 minutes, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 40 minutes.
Fired. And at 3.5 miles range, Rodney fires 2 torpedoes. They both miss. But all the while they're continuing to pummel her. In all, over 2,000 heavy shells are fired from the Rodney, King George V, Norfolk, and Dorsetshire, and some 400 hit it. A lot of those strike the hull, and very few penetrate the waist armour. Only about half a dozen penetrate the hull. But most of the damage is on the deck superstructure, gun turrets, and above the waistline. And, you just think about those shells. If 15, 16-inch shell weighing a ton each.
Yeah.
Think what 200 tons of shells coming down on you is going to do. King George V is struggling with gun defects, just as the Prince of Wales had done. Remember that KG-5 is a brand new battleship as well. But the secondary armament is continuing to fire until after her main 14-inch guns have stopped. And watching Bismarck, Admiral Tovey frankly can't even believe that she can still be afloat. But by 10 a.m., after more than an hour, Bismarck is a burning wreck. The crew can be seen running along the deck, through fires, jumping into the sea. At 9:30, half an hour earlier, Somerville had ordered another Swordfish attack. 12 Swordfish flew off the arc roll, but arriving with battle in full flow, they then just sort of circle around and watch and kind of then skedaddle back again. And although the Bismarck is still afloat, it's all over. She's finished. She's no longer a threat. Nothing more Tovey can do, really.
Yeah.
And stays longer than perhaps she should have done with the fuel situation. So she gives orders to the KG-5 and Rodney to return to port, but with one last signal, which is any ship with torpedoes to close Bismarck and torpedo her. So there you go.
But I mean, this is the thing there, because Vian's tribals have used them all their torpedoes up. Tartar and Mashona have already turned for home, because they're out of fuel. Dorsetshire still has some torpedoes, so she comes in to a mile from Bismarck's starboard beam. And it's incredible. Fires 2 torpedoes, both of which hit. Then she sails to the side and fires a third, which also hits. Stop it. He's dead. It's awful. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, however, 10 a.m., Earls, who, as we saw, had taken over command, has given the order for what they call Measure 5, the scuttling of the ship. And these orders are witnessed by Matrose, who's an able seaman, Heinz Staat, who's just a rating on the ship, who serves in Earl's command post. I mean, because there's did she sink? Was she scuttled? We know from Staat's testimony that this was what was intended. At the same time, the order was given to abandon ship.
Well, we'll come into that in the next episode.
Yeah. It's a point of debate, isn't it? And there are several ways out of the command post. You can go up a vertical ladder, which runs up to the superstructure, which is on fire and with ammunition cooking off and everything smashed to pieces and so on, or through one of the bulkhead doors. And Staat doesn't fancy the ladder, so he goes through the port door, finds the next compartments flooded with hammocks floating in the ship listing. He manages to get up to the next deck in a compartment of yellow-green smoke full of wounded and doctors and orderlies giving morphine injections. Staat goes on and up onto the battery deck and into the main canteen next to the funnel and finds Earls and about 300 men all struggling to get out. They can't go forward because of the fires and the midship's hatch is jammed as well. So everyone's pushing and shoving to get through the narrow door to the aft and the thick fumes in the canteen. It's just a scene from hell, isn't it? And there's another sailor, Herbert Blum, who's also in the canteen.
Yes, remember him? He's the guy who was the officer said to him, it's 100,000 to 1 shot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he's sheltered by the funnel when a shell bursts into the next compartment, blows open a bulkhead door, and Blum saw a wounded man carried out and another with no arms as well. And they're in the Blum and Start in the canteen where there's another explosion. Blum remembers a blinding red ball of fire. Start recalls a blue-green flare and then yellow-white like phosphorus and the after funnel growing red. I mean, they're in a steel inferno, aren't they? And they're both thrown by the blast. They recover, they pick themselves up. It's just absolute carnage. There's 100 dead, including Earls. Many, many more wounded. Men maimed, limbs missing, splintered bones sticking out. There's blood everywhere, guts everywhere. Worse possibly than what George Woolley imagined. And both managed to get out. And on the deck, Start sees even more wounded. There's a man with a leg blown off, imploring him to throw him overboard. But Start barely has the strength to keep himself going. And then he sees another man take off his trousers and get ready to jump overboard. There's another blast. And he sees only the head and torso of the man plunging into the sea.
Pretty grim, isn't it?
It's just horrendous, isn't it? Start and Blum eventually jump into the sea. Blum is with Kapitän Lieutenant Gerhard Junak, who's the chief engineering officer. Junak gathers together a number of survivors, Blum included. Junak has placed the timed explosive for scuttling the ship. He heard them go off and managed to gather men onto the quarterdeck. They're also joined by Müllenheim Rechberg near the sea turret. And Junak now says, "We'll give 3 Sig Heils, then we'll go overboard. Don't worry, comrades. I'll be taking a Hamburg girl in my arms again and we'll meet once more on the Reeperbahn." And they give 3 Sig Heils. Someone begins singing the national anthem and then they jump over the side. I mean, this is amazing, isn't it? And at this moment, Tovey, who's several miles away on the bridge of the King George V, he sees Bismarck heave over, roll, then she's capsized, and then she sinks. And all around her are men swimming about in lifebelts. So the Bismarck, the mightiest battleship in the world, had lasted 9 days in battle. That's her operational life.
Yep, it's operational life. That is it.
God.
It's not great for all that effort, is it?
It's certainly not. And you think of her setting sail, Admiral Lütjens, full of fatalism. Well, he's been proved right, if nothing else, hasn't he? We've covered the pursuit, the Swordfish attack, the actually rather disturbing sinking of the ship and the sort of making sure she was dead approach of the Royal Navy under Admiral Tovey, which is, I found that really hard to,
Yeah, it's pretty grim.
I might have a nightmare this evening, Jim.
I hope not. But the whole thing's all over in an hour and 10 minutes. I mean, that's the amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But first of all, let's go back to the Dorsetshire because it is the Dorsetshire. Remember, the Rodney and the KG5 have gone. They're low on fuel. They've already outstayed their fuel welcome, and they've turned. So it is left to these cruisers, the Norfolk and Dorsetshire particularly, and a couple of destroyers which are still around to kind of do the picking up. And Dorsetshire is the ship mainly responsible for it, but not until at least an hour after the sinking, because they've got to kind of sort themselves out. They've got to check everything's okay. Anyway, rafts, ropes, scrambling nets are all lowered over the edges, and they can see the men in the water. And many men are struggling because their fingers are frozen. They can't grip properly. And midshipman Joe Brooks goes down with one of the lifelines, and he tries to get a bowline around a German who'd lost both arms and was gripping the lifeline with his teeth. I mean, can you imagine? And the ship rolls, and then both men go under. Brooks never sees him again. That's it.
God.
We mentioned Herbert Blum. He's reached Dorsetshire's bow, but then sucked under by a wave and felt himself under the keel. And he comes up on the other side. I mean, can you imagine how terrifying that would have been? And then he thinks, I'm safe. And then the waves carry him away. So he thinks, oh my God, I'm toast again. And then at last, the Murray turns up and picks him up.
So Dorsetshire, she rescues 80 or so people, and the Murray another 20. But there's still hundreds more in the water who need to be helped and hauled up. And Dorsetshire's navigating officer, Lieutenant Commander Durant, spots a smoky discharge on the water 2 miles away. And he thinks it's a U-boat. So they've no choice. Captain Martin on the Dorsetshire has no choice but to ring down for full speed. And on Murray, Commander Armstrong issues the same order, and they're away. And they leave the men in the water.
This is a really, really awful awful moment. I mean, it's just terrible because, there's men already on the nets and they're still just gripping to the nets, but they can't wait for them to come up. They either manage to crawl up while the ship is going, but it's going at 20 plus knots, and most of them just fall off.
That's that.
And they disappear with the cries of the German prisoners in the water, knowing that they're going to be consigned to a watery grave. I mean, terrible, terrible fate. Absolutely horrendous. And all of them die except 5 men who are miraculously found by U-74 at around 7 p.m. that night. So can you imagine? They've been in the water for, 9 hours.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
But with the sinking of the Bismarck, I think, you can say that the lion has caught the jackal. The Prince Eugen, by the way, manages to dodge British ships and does reach Brest on the 1st of June.
Yeah.
But, and this is the key point, no major German warship ever cruises into the Atlantic ever again.
And the next time the Prince Eugen slips her moorings is February the 12th the following year. With the Scharnhorst and Eisenhower, as the Germans throw in the towel in the Atlantic with their surface fleet.
Yep.
Which is another story to be told another time, and one that's wreathed in controversy itself, but actually is it's them giving up. They know they can't do it because of what's happened to Bismarck. They know the game's up, but it's not the end of the saga.
Not really. Well, because there's an court of inquiry because of the sinking of the Hood.
Which is very much in the Nelsonian mode, which is they've not been Nelsonian enough. According to Admiral Dudley Pound, that he wants Wake Walker and Captain Jack Leach of the Prince of Wales court-martialed, doesn't he? For not pursuing the Bismarck aggressively enough.
This is just absolutely extraordinary, and this is for not pursuing the Bismarck after sinking of the Hood. Tovey, when he hears about this, is absolutely appalled, and replies very, very tersely that as far as he's concerned, the conduct of both men has been absolutely exemplary, and they've done precisely what he wanted them to do, and he specifically didn't want them to pursue it, so he's having no part in it whatsoever. And Pound goes, well, okay, well, if you don't do it, then the Admiralty can order the courts-martial. And to that, Tovey replies that if Pound insists, he would lower his own flag as Commander-in-Chief and attend their trial on their behalf. And after that, notes Tovey, I heard no more about it.
Wow.
Pound doesn't come out terribly well, does he, out of the war, really?
I think had Pound been in Tovey's command, he'd have probably ordered exactly the same stuff, demanded exactly the same things of the captains under his command. It's just he's not in that situation. He's not dealing with the odds as Tovey finds them in front of him, is he?
No.
So maybe in a different job he'd have performed differently. But yes, it's not great, is it? No.
Anyway, we should look at the consequences of the loss of the Bismarck. What does this mean? Because we've been building up to this moment and making great play of it. Or certainly, particularly, I have, saying that it is this crucial turning point in the war in the Atlantic, and I really genuinely believe that to be the case. I think you've got to the point where Britain is not going to lose the Atlantic War by this point. It doesn't mean say you still haven't got 2 long years of pain and turmoil ahead till the end of May 1943 when the U-boats are finally defeated. But even so, this is a major turning point. They've got to the point where they're not going to lose.
Yeah,
and it's also true that there's always been this argument that the threat of marauding German warships has still ties down quite a lot of naval forces and other forces, and this is the argument. But I was sort of thinking about this afterwards. I'm not entirely sure this is true, and let me try and explain why. Because the home fleet is always going to be the home fleet. I mean, it's always going to be strong, and it's always going to be operating within the vicinity of the British Isles. So you're not tying that down because that's already going to be there anyway. And I would also argue that RAF Coastal Command is also, that's the whole point. I mean, the clue is in the title. So they're always going to be there.
Yeah.
And Bomber Command don't do anything other than they continually mine access ports, German ports, whether it be sort of Brest or Saint-Nazaire or whatever. But they tend to do so when the poor weather prevents them bombing the continent. So, it's a kind of an alternative target rather than one where they're having to diverge from their stated aim of destroying German cities or whatever. So I'm not sure that they do tie down the British particularly.
Well, this is I've been pondering this because I've been looking at the Channel Dash. Prince Eugen is then tied down by the Air Force in Brest for 7 months. Scharnhorst guys now, they've been there since the end of Operation Berlin, since they've been on raiding. The RAF has kept them holed up. The Navy aren't involved in it. Well, the submarines picketing Brest occasionally, but basically they're holed up by Coastal Command. If you think of it only in terms of the Navy, yes, they aren't tying the Navy down, but the British are fighting a 3D big war strategy. This is big war written as it ought to be. This is the British way of war, where what you do, you use all your assets at your disposal, you use your technology. I mean, one of the interesting things is Bomber Command use oboe for the first time attacking Brest. So they're using all the latest stuff, because they know exactly where the pinch point is with the German naval effort.
Yeah.
Which is to keep these surface ready. You don't need to use the home fleet to do that, because Coastal Command, Bomber Command, they're working effectively in concert, right?
Right.
So they tie down a British air effort. And sometimes you will read that the air effort on Brest, they don't hit her that often. But they're in and out of dry dock, these ships. Every 3 months, essentially, an armor-piercing bomb will go through the bridge or something on one of these big battleships.
Cause yet more damage.
They have to start again. And they reach the point where the crews are sent back to Germany and they use the ships for training new crews up.
Yeah, but my point is that I don't think it's tying down lots of British resources, keeping those ships in Brittany, because they're going to be there anyway.
If you just think of it do they tie down the Navy? Well, yes and no.
Not really.
Well, no, but when they come out, the Navy then does everything it can to stop them, right?
But that's sort of the job of the home fleet. I mean, the home fleet is there, whether they're in operations or whether they're in Scapa Flow.
But this is like thinking about the Battle of Britain and forgetting that the Royal Navy are in the picture too, isn't it?
Yeah.
The defence of British waters is a 3D effort. It's not just surface ships, and I think, basically the Admiralty's eye of Sauron is on them every now and again. They have to keep an eye on them and
Yes.
check on them and, formulate plans for what happens when they emerge. But the Germans are bottled up. And this is the price of not having a strategy. Having some ships, but not a strategy.
Right.
Having some ships that are not a fleet that don't constitute a navy in a coherent way. That's what it comes down to.
Well, yeah, and I think the one thing we can be completely agreed on is that whatever their pre-war strategy had been, however woolly, it is now in complete tatters.
Yeah.
Their pre-war plan, the Z plan, remember that from way back when we were doing Battle of the Atlantic and Admiral Carls and all the rest of it, and, we're going to have this surface fleet and it's going to maraud in the Atlantic and all the rest of it. That was based on surface raiders marauding Allied shipping in the Atlantic, and this is just no longer possible after sinking of the Bismarck. It's in tatters. There's nothing the Germans just simply don't dare it. It's not even a question of not even daring it. They physically can't, because all their ships are penned in and damaged every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And they just can't cope with the loss of a second battleship. It's the only other one they have, the Scharnhorst. And of course, they're also struggling with the endless technical problems plus damage just by being in these French ports, which you've already touched on. So, they've got themselves into this terrible bind that they can't get out of. And of course, all Germans know of these ships.
Yeah.
So if you build them up and build them up and build them up, and then they get sunk after 9 days on their first operational sortie, that's not a great look, is it?
No.
So,
because they've tried to play the naval power as prestige game, which the British have been playing all this time. They've tried to engage the British on the British's own terms, and they can only fail, really, because the catching up you've got to do if you want a fleet the size of the Royal Navy is essentially impossible, isn't it? If you're Germany, it just can't be done.
And also, we like to view events not in isolation.
Yeah.
So let's just think about this. This is the end of May 1941. Crete is happening at the same time. So this is bad news for Britain, mixed news for the Germans, I would say. But Operation Barbarossa, the largest land operation in the history of the world, is less than 4 weeks away.
Yeah.
So what is the point of Barbarossa? Well, the point of Barbarossa is to crush the Soviet Union quickly and then turn back west to destroy Britain and eliminate the threat of the USA. But a main part of the plan was to eliminate Britain, is to attack Britain's sea lanes.
Yeah.
And now they can't, or they can't do it as effectively because they haven't got enough U-boats. So they sort of they can give it a go, but this means a total switch of pre-war strategy, a change of tactics. And this at a time where they're very ill-placed to make this sudden dramatic switch. Because the onus now is going to be on the U-boat arm, but they've neglected it, remember? And, 563 ships have been hit by U-boats in 1940, but only 501 in 1941. I say only 501, but that's less than in 1940 when Britain was at its most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so the successes are actually going down, not up, in 1941. And it's interesting to look at U-boat production. 1938, 9 are built. 1939, 18 are built. 1940, 50 are built. In 1941, 199 are built. So you see this sort of shift of emphasis.
They're getting the message.
But it's worth just reminding everyone that the BDU, the U-boat arm, begins the war with just 3,000 personnel. So you can't just click your fingers and suddenly increase this.
No.
And at the end of May 1941, it's the previous year's production figures of new U-boats that are important. And so what you suddenly have at the end of May 1941 is a hiatus. At the very moment Barbarossa is being launched, Britain's sea lanes are under little threat in the big scheme of things.
And it's sort of, the U-boat arm is also, it's sort of a one-man band, isn't it? The size of Dönitz's headquarters and all that, it's not a serious part of the German war effort. It's not been taken seriously enough.
I really think that this is a really, really important moment, not just in the naval war, but in the Second World War as well.
And interestingly, as you pointed out, at the same time as things are going very, very badly elsewhere, events are happening thick and fast at this phase of the war. Apparent setbacks for the Allies are thick and fast. But this is a big setback for the Germans. No two ways about it.
No two ways about it.
Although, is it even a setback? Because this is inevitable. They're not being knocked off their perch here, the Germans. This isn't a moment that could go either way, the sinking of the Bismarck, is it? This isn't a situation that might have a dramatically different outcome because of the way the Admiralty and the British are fighting the defence of their own waters campaign in 3D with air assets and with capital ships. There's no other outcome for the Bismarck. So in a way, it's not a turning point for the Z plan is a turning point for the Germans when they get it wrong in terms of prioritising capital ships over U-boats, right? That's the turning point. Not this. This is the sinking of the Bismarck, the end of the surface fleet, the Channel dash in February the following year are the fruit of the turning point rather than the turning point itself.
Yeah, okay. I take your point. But I just think it's March through to May are really, as we discussed when we were doing our Atlantic series, we were talking about how Britain is sort of getting its shit together. I mean, it has it sorts out the port directors with those the dictators that come in to organise the ports. Yeah. It's completely reimagined its inbound and coastal transportation system and how it's going to logistically continue. It's sorted that out. It is spending considerable amount of time and money on new technology such as the cavity magnetron.
Yeah.
You then have this moment in March where those 3 U-boat aces are killed or captured. Then you have this, and it is the moment where, yes, the naval strategy, the German naval strategy is already in tatters, but it is the moment where that is spelled out crystal clear for all to see that this strategy has no possible hope. And so I just think it's such a big important marker. Because psychologically, the loss of the Bismarck is so enormous.
Yeah.
Psychologically, the loss of the Hood is enormous, but it's an emotional one rather than a material one. Whereas the loss of the Bismarck is emotional and material.
And I think what's interesting as well that you could say is compared to the First World War, these naval encounters, because Jutland is finally they get to have a proper battle. It's essentially kind of inconclusive. Although again, that's the thing. This is the thing that's argued about, isn't it? But this is a naval encounter that is conclusive for the Royal Navy, a victory, no two ways about it, and proof for all the admirals who've been chomping at the bit to get stuck in. That getting stuck in works. That the risks are worth taking on. Because after all, they've all been told that they're going to fight this long sort of attritional war where they contain the Germans. Here's an opportunity to kick the 7 bells out of them. Because that's how the battle's fought, isn't it? That's the thing we've been talking about is going in within a mile and firing torpedoes right at the end. It's very interesting, this, isn't it? Because if you are of a mind to rethink the war in terms of, well, what's the absolute priority? Well, it's shipping. If you're going to win this war, one way or another, shipping is what. Then they're taking care of business.
I was saying, future war is also about shipping and about underwater cables and the sea and everything.
This is taking care of business. So Crete, in the end, well, it's a disaster for the army, but not for Allied strategy. You know what I mean? Is that this is the fruits of two strategies ripening and coming into play.
Yeah.
And if you're embarking on Barbarossa and you haven't sorted out your sea lanes, or the Allied sea lanes, particularly as what's going to happen is Lend-Lease is going to go bonkers, and that requires, for the Soviets, that requires control of the sea to stop that stuff getting to the Soviets. Forget about it, basically. Even before you were held up outside Moscow.
Yep.
You've had it.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Hood, because
Yes.
I think it's not unsurprising that the loss of the Hood has attracted so much controversy, really, because she symbolises so much and was used to symbolise so much. That was sort of her function in peacetime, was she was symbolic.
Yeah.
She was a hard power symbol. She was a national prestige symbol. She was a sign of the modernity and power of the British Empire and all that stuff. So in a way, it's not unlike, I don't know, Princess Diana dying in a car crash, which is impossible for some people to accept,
yes.
right?
I thought I'd look at one piece. There's a very good piece of work by Dr. Eric Grove, who's sadly no longer with us, but is a great naval historian of recent times and hugely respected around the world, and a very considered piece about this whole controversy about armor and deck armor and all the rest of it. So just to explain again, just so that people understand this, you have your armor around the ship's sides, because for the most part you're sending shells in and they're careering in, they're not plunging in. So your deck, you do have deck armor, but obviously a battle cruiser of like Hood, and Hood is unique, by the way.
Yeah.
There is only one battle cruiser on this model. It is a cruiser, so the idea is that it's, you have great gunfire, you have great speed, but it's a little bit of a payoff. I mean, she kind of is a battleship, but she's not classified as a battleship. But there are points of weakness, and one of the points of weakness is because of the original design that was designed in the First World War, and which is why there is only one. Because they actually thought, well, actually, now we've built this ship, actually, maybe this isn't the way to go.
We need to move on. Yeah.
But the end result is one that's enormous, biggest in the world at the time, very kind of, it's her aesthetic lines. And obviously is this statement of British naval power, because she's not having to fight a war. She's just going around with her naval squadron cruising the world, which is why everyone knows about her. But just because she's the most famous ship in the Royal Navy doesn't mean she's the best ship in the Royal Navy at the time. She's significant because of her fame. Anyway, it's worth just going through this, because she's not really a battle cruiser in the traditional sense. Her design is completely recast after Jutland, which was fought on the very day Hood had originally been laid down, which is the 31st of May 1916. And after Jutland, the changes to Hood are so extensive that a completely new keel is laid on the 1st of September that year, 1916. So design work continues, taking full account of the inputs of the Grand Fleet, and the final legend and the final design for the Hood is not approved until a year later, at the end of August 1917.
Yeah.
So the naval constructors in charge of the project were Stanley Goodall and A.L. Atwood, working under the very distinguished Director of Naval Construction, which is the DNC, Sir Eustace Tennyson Dyncourt.
Right.
And the new Hood that emerges after Jutland combines the speed of a battlecruiser with substantial protection, better than the standards of almost any contemporary British battleship. And it's worth just pointing that out right there and then.
But then, though, this is the thing. This is a First World War design ship, but responding to the things they're discovering as that war progresses. And so she's going to be the best protected ship in the fleet. And they have started to figure out the effect of plunging fire at long range. So they need greater horizontal protection. So she needs better protected decking, or deck, essentially.
Yeah.
So in August of 1918, they add an extra inch of protective steel plating to add to the tops of the magazines. And in the following year, May 1919, after the war, the horizontal plating covering the downward sloping sides of the main protective deck are thickened with 100 tons of extra armour at the expense of some of the secondary battery. Because this is like, if you want more armour, you're going to have less speed. Or if you want more armour and you want to retain your speed, you've got to lose armament. And if it's the like the iron triangle that for armoured fighting vehicles.
And just to reiterate, for those who haven't heard the earlier series, the whole point about plunging fire is you do that at distance, because when you're firing at long range, you're lobbing the shell up. So it is the angle at which it is coming down is steeper than if you're at close range, where it's a much more gentle trajectory.
Yeah.
So plunging fire is when it's coming from long distance. And when you're at that long distance and you're advancing towards the enemy, that is the zone of vulnerability.
Yeah.
The zone of invulnerability is as you get closer and the shells become shallower as they're fired. So I think it's just worth just reminding people of that.
And the Board of the Admiralty essentially keep tinkering with the hood, don't they? And with the design. So on the 17th of July, 1919, they want more measures to guarantee the safety of the magazine from explosion, as they say. So they decide to increase the thickness of the horizontal protection over the magazines to 6 inches aft, 6 inches of steel, and 5 inches forward.
That's a lot.
Well, when we talk about tank armor, it tends to be, I don't know, what is it on a Tiger? It's sort of 100 millimeters or something.
120 millimeters is the front of a church, which is the thickest around.
So the 6 inches aft, 5 inches forward, and a general thickening of the main deck in the area of the 5.5 inch guns, which is another 470 tons. So again, that has to be balanced by what they call deletions elsewhere, because if you put the weight of one thing up, you're going to have to lose something else. So they get rid of the torpedo tubes.
And this is the nub of the matter. Well, they should have done. That's the point.
Right.
The obvious thing to do is to get rid of the torpedo tubes. But because she is a cruiser, she's got a battle cruiser, she's got these torpedo tubes. And right at the time, this design is seen as a disaster waiting to happen.
Mm. Because
the torpedoes have to be stored near the tubes. And the point about these tubes, it's okay having below water torpedo tubes because it's deep in the ship. If you've got above water torpedo tubes, which sort of fling them out from the sides, that means your torpedoes are near the top. And the problem is they're absolutely stuffed full of explosives. So if they're hit, it's boom. And there's a very strong argument for saying you don't really need torpedoes in such a huge ship, because that's what light cruisers are for, and it's what destroyers are for.
Yeah.
Go back to Vian's tribal class destroyers beetling around with their torpedoes, for example.
Yeah.
But the Grand Fleet says, no, we need to retain them because we need to develop techniques of long-range torpedo fire. So they've all been factored in, and, we want to use these for noting Browning shots and to create confusion in the enemy line at the beginning of an action. And Admiral Henry Oliver, Chief of the War Staff in London, also thinks that torpedo tubes are indispensable for close-range action at night or in poor visibility. But the problem is what that means is you're trying to do everything with one ship. And it's like, what is it? Is it effectively a very fast battleship, which is with huge guns? Or is it something much more versatile? Is it the equivalent of the TSR-2, the first multiform jet plane? Or is it something that is quite specific? So the doubts of both Dyncourt and Admiral Tudor, who is the controller, are overruled, and above water tubes are included in the hood's design between the upper and the forecastle decks, rather than on the main deck to minimise the effects of any explosion. So this is the little sort of compromise to this. And Dyncourt thought that this is nuts. And he writes, "It is considered that the fitting of these above water tubes involves a very serious risk of total loss in the event of the explosion of a torpedo taking place. The upper strength girder of the ship would undoubtedly be destroyed for a considerable distance from the point of the explosion." So despite this warning, and this is the director of naval construction, no immediate action is taken. So the debate just sort of rumbles on as the work on Hood continues. Then on the 2nd of December 1918, the side plates that were an important feature of the structural strength of the ship had not yet been cut. So at this point, the director of naval construction, who again is still Tennyson Dyncourt, points out there would be no difficulty in dispensing with the above water torpedo tubes in Hood. The risk involved owing to the explosion of one of these torpedoes is undoubtedly a very serious one and might result in the crippling of the most important unit in the fleet. And he warns that no protection that can be provided for the heads would be of any value against a direct hit. So in other words, he's saying, I'm telling you here in writing, this is not worth the risk.
This is a terrible idea.
Whatever advantage it might have of having torpedoes, it's simply not worth it when you're putting them on such an enormous and expensive ship.
Yeah. Well, and then, but he's ignored. I mean, it's extraordinary. This controller of naval instruction, Admiral Tudor, ignores this advice, and he thinks, well, he's swayed by the extent of the work that's been done.
They've done it already,
and this is a ship that's had a new keel. So will she ever be finished? Must be part of the thing that's driving this. Do we keep having to change our minds?
Yep.
And so he writes in red ink, in view of the progress of the work, the above water tubes, etc., should be completed in the hood. And they carry on arguing. In July 1990, they get rid of the forward pairs of torpedo tubes, but the rear ones by the main mast are kept for ongoing experimental purposes. But the idea is, come a war fitting,
we'll get rid of them.
Yeah, they remove the 3-inch mantles for protection. I mean, the problem with this, you could just see this, can't you? That
oh, we forgot to change it back again.
Yeah, to Danecourt, it looks like he's won because he's got them, to say, all right, well, in time of wartime, we'll get rid of them, but they're still there anyway. As far as he's concerned, in wartime, she won't be blown in half. But actually, she's completed with 4 aft torpedo tubes, but without the extra protection. So worst of both worlds.
Yeah.
And the consideration is that it would cost another 1,040 tons of plating, which would, again, affect the draft speed, fuel consumption, strain on the engines, all that of the ship. She'd be a foot lower in water, which makes it more difficult to bring into port, difficult docking. Danecourt explains all this to the controller, and the controller decides nothing further to be done at present. It's not the war. Park it. The can gets kicked down the road, which in the matter of defence procurement, when you're working on big expensive projects, that never happens. But in this instance, it did.
So the issue is raised again in 1927, by which time she's done her world tour, of course, in 1923-24, by which time it's thought that cruisers should have torpedoes.
Yeah. So
it's recommended that the existing tubes be retained, but with a war fitting, and the 4 forward tubes also put back. It's like, no. You've got the bows, then you've got the 2 forward guns, then you've got the superstructure, you've got 2 funnels, and then you've got the main mast at the back, which is about 2/3 of the way down the ship. And the torpedo tubes are right by it, down by the decks.
But you can see what's going on here, Jim, isn't it? It's as the Navy's being restricted in its spending, they think, well, if there's torpedo, if we've got torpedoes on her, then we don't have to build a destroyer or something. There's that kind of thinking. If we can get a machine, if we get a ship that does everything, we need fewer ships.
You've absolutely hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, it's trimming, and it's not going to work.
No, and by the end of the 1920s, there's a new director of naval construction who is Sir William Berry. And again, he warns the presence of these above-water tubes involves a serious risk of total loss. There's that phrase again, total loss, in the event of an explosion of the torpedo taking place. The upper strength of, it's going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
It's almost word for word what Townsend Danecourt has said a few years earlier. And despite this, the Assistant Chief of the Naval Staff, who is none other than Rear Admiral Dudley Pound, decides the threat is very small, if not negligible. And so on balance, he feels that having torpedo tubes would be of value and of greater benefit than the small risks from having them where they are, because there's new 21-inch long-range torpedoes now available that could travel 13,500 yards at 25 knots. But there's obvious problems with these. It's all very well having long-range torpedoes, but when are you ever going to use them, and when are they ever going to hit anything?
Yeah.
At that range. I would argue they're not. So they decide to go with them, increase the mantlets, which would be an extra 30 tons. And this is the only extra armour added. And even so, Hood is still 42,752 tons. So adding even a little bit more armour is a problem. Then there's a refit in 1932. And this removes all the second battery guns and replaces them with anti-aircraft armament. And that reduces the weight by 300 tons. And great, that's all well and good and everything. But Hood never actually receives long-range torpedoes, just the standard 21-inch. So the whole reason why Pound said that they should stick with it is never fulfilled. So 4 per side is hardly a serious contribution to their armament, is it? In the big scheme of things.
No.
And the truth is, in May 1941, they're still there. 4 505-pound charges of TNT on each side, just forward of the main mast. And of course, this is pretty much where the first shell that probably hits Hood, because it's not from the Bismarck, it's from the Prince Eugen. It's an 8-inch shell which enters from the starboard and hits the port side. And this strike is seen by Captain Alfred Phillips from HMS Norfolk. And Phillips had previously served on the Hood and immediately thinks, oh my God, the torpedoes, and is relieved when he sees no large explosion.
Yeah.
But this single shell, this 8-inch shell, does cause quite serious damage, and it starts extensive fires breaking out, particularly in the ammunition compartments. And this means that the torpedoes, at the very least, would have been starting to get hot.
Yeah.
Because they're still there. And just to remind you, that is 4 torpedoes each with 515 pounds of charges of TNT. So that's 2,060 pounds worth of TNT. That's a lot of TNT.
Yeah, and not where you want it either.
No, and then the fatal 15-inch shell from Bismarck hits in the same locality somewhere near the main mast, according to the only recorded observer who saw it. And the result is the catastrophic explosion that we see in the same spot. And Stanley Goodall, a ship designer who we mentioned at the beginning, who at the time wrote, such an explosion could break the ship's back, already weakened in this neighbourhood by earlier damage. With the force on the after bulkhead of the engine room due to the ship's speed of 28 knots and the low reserve of buoyancy in the after part of the ship, this portion would rapidly sink. And I would argue that it seems very likely, and I'm in complete agreement with the logic of Eric Grove's argument, that if you've got 2,000 pounds of TNT already warming up from an earlier shot and you suddenly get hit by a 15-inch shell, the chances of that then detonating and causing a catastrophic explosion, which breaks the back of the ship, which is, after all, precisely what happens, is quite high. Yeah.
But the Board of Inquiry that then, convenes in June doesn't reach the same conclusion. But then I suppose there's an awful lot of people who don't want to, admit they got the design wrong.
Of course not. Well, they're not going to admit that, are they ever?
Exactly. But Blake and his colleagues plumped for the idea of a penetration of the aft magazines, but maintaining of the useless torpedo tubes with all that TNT at best didn't help and may have been responsible. So they don't know. And of course, it is impossible to know is the truth. Eric Grove, what he says is what really happened to the Hood is still a mystery. What could have been eliminated was the threat from the useless torpedoes. The Hood was an obsolescent ship with an old-fashioned armour distribution. She had other weaknesses, notably the defective Mark V Dreyer fire control table that could not cope with the rapid approach angle used by Admiral Holland as a result of his recognition of his flagship's relative weakness to long-range plunging fire. The Hood was also reputedly in poor structural condition. Because she's old, isn't she, by this point?
Yeah.
More than 20 years old, and they wear out ships, even made from the finest steel. To send her into action with an explosive charge of more than 4,000 pounds of relatively unprotected TNT against her main strength girder increased the odds against her and the 1,419 men on board to an unacceptable degree. Whether or not they actually caused her loss, the Hood's controversial torpedoes were an Achilles heel she could well have done without. Of course, it's not conclusive, because it can't be, but it does sound like loading up odds against yourself, those torpedoes. And she wasn't discovered, of course, the wreck wasn't discovered until 2001, the 19th of July in 2001, discovered by a team led by David Mearns, lying in Erminger Basin of the Denmark Strait, about 1.7 miles down, 270 miles from Reykjavik. And they used an Ocean Explorer 6000. They found her in 39 hours, after 6 years of research and planning. Incredible.
Yep.
And what did they find, Jim?
Well, not all the questions are conclusively answered, but the main results of this really, frankly, extraordinary expedition and adventure and discovery of the Hood is that the initial discovery showed confirmation that the Hood was destroyed by a large conflagration explosion in her aft magazines.
Yeah.
So, though it's true there's no smoking gun or anything like that was found, the damage fits what one would expect from a conflagration explosion of 112 or more tons of cordite and 4,000 pounds worth of TNT.
Yeah.
And it seems fairly conclusive that a shell from the Bismarck was the one that killed that, that killed it, basically. There's also confirmation that the Hood had definitely been in the midst of her final 20-degree turn to port. Prior to this, many people doubted that this final turn to port was ever executed, but it was. So that's clear. There's also discovery that there was catastrophic damage to Hood's bow as well as the aft section, so the rear section behind the main mast. And this was the main surprise of the expedition team, because the mechanism for the bow's detachment was hotly debated, with two very different possibilities ultimately being drawn. So when they find it in three sections, basically. There's the middle section, the bow separated, and then the rear bit, the aft bit separated as well. And one is that the forward magazine explodes, and the other is that the bow detached due to stress and implosion. But there's no record of a shell coming in the forward bit, so I've got to say it's got to be the latter to me. David Mearns firmly believes that the second explosion, of equal or greater strength to the one that originally broke the ship's back, occurred in the ammunition spaces near the forward turrets and the conning tower, but I don't know. He says there's evidence of a bird's eye view of sonar image which shows that the debris field associated with the forward hull break is larger than that of the stern break debris field.
Yeah.
A much better understanding of why so few crew survived the sinking, because it was so quick.
Yeah, it's instant.
You can see that flame, whatever flame's going up is also spreading that way as well.
Yeah, and
so the scenario for the loss from his discoveries is just before 6 o'clock. Hood was in the midst of a 20-degree turn to port, and one or more 15-inch shells from Bismarck penetrated and detonated in one of the aft magazines. This instantaneously spread to the other rear magazines of the ship, which suffered a massive conflagration / explosion, and this caused massive damage to the surrounding areas of the hull and broke the ship's back, which is obviously its keel.
Yeah.
As the stern detached, a large proportion of the adjacent area of the hull was wrenched apart and collapsed. The detached stern sank first, followed shortly by the damaged adjacent areas. The ship's forward momentum likely assisted in the collapse. The damaged rear areas then helped pull the bow under for its rapid descent. And during its plunge, either just before or just after leaving the surface, the bow suffers a massive internal damage from an internal explosion. Subsequently, the bow detached and a notable area of the forward hull broke apart in the process. So it might be an explosion, but it doesn't seem like it's caused by a shell. That's the point.
Yeah.
So it might be the consequences of the conflagration hitting that forward magazine. It could be anything.
Yeah, it could be anything. Yeah.
But yes, the catastrophic nature of the dual explosions and the rapidity of the sinking account for why there were so few survivors.
Yeah, but 112 tons of cordite. I think you could. It is amazing that anyone survived. I think what you can say is everyone was killed instantly, and had no idea that they even faced death. Right, beyond the fear, the intensity of being in combat. Right.
Yeah, a large proportion certainly, for sure.
Incredibly shocking.
There's a very good website, which is hmshood.org.uk. And if you go to the Hood Today bit, there's lots of photos of the expedition, and you can see what Hood looks like at 1.7 miles down. And actually, this was all part of a Channel 4 documentary, which I remember watching. And they took back Ted Briggs, who we mentioned a few times in this series, and the previous series. He's the last survivor. And you see Briggs flinging a reef over the site. And it's incredibly moving, really, to see that. And Ted Briggs had an incredible career after the Hood, because he then served on HMS Hillary in the Mediterranean and the Channel. He was at Sicily, Salerno, and D-Day, and then later served in Korea. And he didn't finally leave the Navy until 1973. And he then went on to become president of the HMS Hood Association.
Amazing.
He finally died in 2008. So, I'm glad he had a long and fruitful life. But, just amazing. So, yeah. So that's the Hood.
Right.
And they recovered her bell. And they also put down a plaque with everyone's name. So there is now a war grave, official war grave. And they brought back the ship's bell, which is now in Portsmouth. And
then the wreck of the Bismarck was discovered a few years, earlier in 1989 by Dr. Robert D. Ballard and team, which also included James Cameron's brother.
Yeah. Well, Ballard is the same guy who discovers the Titanic.
And they used new remote underwater cameras, and James Cameron has made a film about it, which is fascinating.
Well worth watching.
They discovered that she's largely intact, although the gun batteries are gone and spread, because they fell out as the ship plunged down, upside down. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, because it turns over. And they literally just fall out.
And there's lots of hits on the wreck, plenty on the side that have had little impact because of this armor waste.
Yeah, it's amazing because on the film, on the Expedition Bismarck, the James Cameron film, you can see all these shots where these hits have pummeled against the side of the the waist armor, and what you get is it sort of looks like a splodge of paint has been chucked at a wall or something. Yeah. So you see the dent, and then you just see this sort of surrounding spray of presumably explosive and bits of metal flying everywhere.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And they're all over it. And also you can see where the other thing that was absolutely clear was the shot on the bridge that had come from the Dorsetshire. They were analysing this and you could see the inside of the bridge. It was just absolute carnage. I mean, total carnage. And their conclusion was that no one in there could have possibly survived.
Yeah.
So there are accounts of Lütjens, saluting as the ship went down and all that kind of nonsense. Unverified, of course, but it's almost certain that him and Lindemann were killed right at the beginning. And they also bring back several veterans. And I've got to say, it's very moving, isn't it? I mean, it's a really fascinating film. I'd really urge anyone who's interested in this to look it up.
Yeah. Because just as nearly no one survives the Hood, it's not very many men who are rescued from Bismarck.
Yeah, I think it's 114, something like that, 112, something like that. Yeah. Yes, it's not very many.
Well, there we are. We've sunk the Bismarck. We've looked at the Hood's torpedo tubes. This has been an absolutely fascinating trip into naval history, Jim. It's been really, really interesting. I'm going to read some more chapters from Ludovic Kennedy's Pursuit, and they'll be up for Patreons if you want to listen to that.
Yep.
It's a fantastic account, really, really exciting to read, if nothing else, and hopefully for you to listen to. We will have the Channel Dash soon as a sort of postscript, because I think, James, you made it clear that this is the end of the Kriegsmarine campaign. German strategy's in tatters. It's a major turning point in the war for the Royal Navy.
Major turning point.
Or had the point been turned long before? Is what I would argue. It's Plan Z is the turning point. And the Germans count themselves out of being able to do anything sensible at sea. Anyway, thanks very much for listening, everyone. You can subscribe on our Apple channel, become officer class, or go to our Patreon where you can join us for live casts, ask us questions in person on the live cast. You can get ticket offers because We Have Ways Fest Sex is hoving into view, not unlike the KG5 coming over the horizon that fateful morning.
With the Rodney, yes.
With the Rodney alongside her. Anyway, we'll see you very soon. Thanks for listening, everyone. Cheerio.
Cheerio.